All members present will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. Or, excuse me, the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Be with us today as we ask your hand of blessing on this meeting. As we consider and take actions today, help us to arrive at decisions that are thoughtful, respectful, and well-informed. Thank you for the solemn honor of serving the public in our roles, and continue to bless all those fortunate enough to live here, work here, or visit here. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is the approval of the final agenda. Motion to approve the final agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I believe the clerk sent you all an email with regard to item 11D, that the attorneys for the bank have requested that we defer this item for 2 weeks to your next meeting. Correct, John?
That's correct. Okay.
I move to approve the final agenda, removing item D temporarily
We added the TDC.
And adding
and adding the TDC projects request.
very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved, seconded. Discussion? Any objection? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is public comment.
Of Chris Straub. Schaub, sorry.
Chris Schaub. Down to the one in the
Here,
front there.
in the center.
Take your mask off for that, Chris.
For the record, my name is Chris Schaub. Good morning, council members. Hope you and your families are all doing well in this challenging environment. I'm extremely disappointed. I applied for my chair and umbrella license late. First time in over 30 years for any of my beach businesses. I was having a problem getting the authorization from the new property owner. Was the new owner trying to apply for this license on his own? Would town staff allow this to happen? I can tell you it did happen in January of 2015, and I lost one of my locations. Just felt I was in the dark. Town employee knew I was having a problem getting the owner's authorization during this renewal time. And the response to me was, best of luck. Certainly would have been refreshing to hear, is there anything I can do to help? It's clear to me that you just do not know how town staff will interpret or act on an ordinance. Yes, the ordinance states the applications are to be made in September. But for me, I was not able to turn in a complete application. I now have the new owner's authorization. I'm here to ask you for a 30-day grace period. I have been paying sales tax, contributing to the economic engine of the state of Florida for a long time. With the stroke of a pen, my beach service has come to an end. A lot of people have suffered the consequences of this pandemic. All beach vendors and many other businesses were shut down 100% in March, April, and May, peak of the season due to the pandemic. Over 2 months of time and money lost. Please don't misunderstand me. I am not trying to put the blame on the pandemic. I do believe it is up to all of us, big and small, to try and get back to as normal as possible. I am asking you for a little compassion and flexibility during this challenging time regarding the renewal of my chair and umbrella license. Thank you for your time and consideration and for your service to our community.
Thank you, Chris. Maybe we'll take a look at that later. Next.
That's all I have signed up. Megan needs to.
Clerk, come on up, Meg.
to work.
I go to work, sorry, or else I'd hang out for the next pieces. Megan Heil, for the record. Morning, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm here to just kind of give you a little update about the LPA and then also ask a request. First and foremost, that we have got Forrest Christer now, who has volunteered to be part of the Historic Committee Advisory Board, or our committee for historic. So we'll be moving that forward, but we'll also be looking at our enabling ordinance to request some changes to that more equate to what we can accomplish on the LPA with the members that we have on. So that'll be coming your way soon. More about how are we going to operate. We have had a couple trying times, couple trying months because we have struggled to get people to volunteer for that board. So we'll be looking at that. We'll also be coming to you 30, 60 days from now requesting a meeting about this year's agendas, priorities, what are we all going to look at as a greater whole, what is priority to you, what's a priority to the LPA, align our priorities, and also look at what the consultant is bringing to us, giving him some time on the comprehensive plan changes. I had to think. But lastly, I'm actually coming in front of you to speak about the side setbacks and the heights. I've spoke to some of you individually. It's got its first reading back in January-ish timeframe. Since then, we've had COVID, and we've also had an election. At that reading of that ordinance, the changes to that, I believe it was Councilmember Butcher who had the most issue with it, understanding it. As you can tell, since then, we've had an election. We have 2 members of the LPA who have been moved up to the town council, and Mr. Butcher is no longer a member of town council. I'd like to get it a second reading. It's important to this town and to the citizenry of this town to look at the heights and the side setbacks. We're about to get in the public hearing here. If you have done a site visit on one of these public hearings you're about to see, you'll notice that the lot next door has been torn down and there's a Potter Builder sign next door. When you hear Potter Builders, they are the ones that built Hickory Island. You know what's coming. They're getting a large box that's maximized and a big brick wall next to them. So I understand why they're trying to do what they're doing to maximize their quality of life instead of looking at that big brick wall that's coming next door to them. But also when you consider this and think about how important this is and why I'm pushing for it, is I live on Hibiscus. We don't have a canal behind our house. We don't have extra space. So if we built to today's standards, if that street came down and built to today's standards, I'd have no sunlight on my pool except from 11 to 2. I'd have no wind in my backyard. So this is a quality of life for many people on this beach. I would say that the horse has left the barn on this one, but I don't believe that it has. We have a lot of properties that have not changed over to the big boxy box houses that we're seeing, cinder block houses that we have coming. I'd just like to see this come and get a second reading or push back to the LPA and get some changes made to it that we all can live with. But let's get this thing moving again. It's important to our citizenry. I mean, you hear it, we know it, and I just want to get it moving. I request that you guys look into why it's not moving forward and see if we can't get this on the coming agendas over the coming months. It's my only request, is to see if we can't get this moving forward again. I understand COVID's probably thrown a little wrench into it. Elections have thrown a little wrench into it, but it's time to look at it again. And I appreciate your attention to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Meg.
Any questions while I'm here?
Are you giving that report as the chair?
I can give it as the chair
Okay.
and also a member of the community.
Well, that makes the difference whether we can ask any questions or not.
And I'll do it as the chair if you want to ask
Okay,
questions.
does anybody have a question of Meg? Anybody want to ask anything? Go
I
ahead,
guess
Jim.
my question would be to Roger. Roger, I thought that went to second hearing, and she's saying it didn't. I'm kind of confused.
I'm actually in the process of Councilman Beach mentioned this to me in the middle of last week, and I'm trying to find out exactly where it is and if we can't, just bring it back forward for everyone's discussion, wherever step it's at. So,
I was under the impression that it was all done.
no,
Yeah.
my recollection was that there was some issues from, I remember Councilman Butcher had some questions. I don't remember if that resulted in get the answers to those questions or an approval. I'll have to check.
Sarah Prost is also left too here, and she was spearheading it for the town too as well. So just trying to get some momentum behind it again.
Definitely.
Can I just add, you don't have to give a long dissertation, but just since the public's paying attention this morning, would you just give and I was here, I could do it, but you could probably do it better, just give us a thumbnail sketch as to what the ordinance is trying to achieve or what it does, just in case, just for the public's benefit?
We're one of the few towns that measures height based off of where the eve is. And so we have got larger houses, taller houses, how about that? We also have got smaller side setbacks, typical side. What we're trying to do is protect view corridors, wind corridors, and sunlight playing here. We created an ordinance and looked at the current ordinance and looked at giving a carrot. So of increasing the side setbacks and lowering the height. So if you want to build all the way out to the edge, then this is how high you're going to go. If you want to come in, you want a higher house, come in a little bit. So we're maintaining a view corridor between the houses and a sunlight plane above it. The idea is that many people have driven down Hickory Island, they see those houses really, really tight together and really, really tall, and it creates a corridor effect. It creates an issue with sunlight plane on that. You never even know the Gulf is on the other side of those houses at the end of the day. And what we're trying to do is protect some of that here on the island while we still can. That is increasing side setbacks both, and this would be for up and down the streets, also Estero, and also Back Bay. So we're looking at the view corridors and the amount of space between the houses everywhere on the beach. Excuse me. Stop even like in my street there, where if I got a tall house all the way around me, we don't have any backyard sunlight. Remember also in this, and I believe this is also in there, is that as these houses are getting bigger, there's more and more mechanical equipment systems, condensers on the outside of your houses, creating more noise. Where are those going to be placed? Because you don't really want those outside your bedroom window. You know, we went from 5,000 square foot house and one condenser, now we're 15,000 square foot and 4 of those running at maximum capacity 24/7. It is a quality of life there too. So we looked at that too as well in this ordinance.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
That wasn't a long dissertation.
That was perfect, yeah.
And it is a passion project too for the LPA to have done this.
Okay, Meg, sounds like it's being looked into, and we'll be hearing more about it soon.
I appreciate the help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, we'll move on. Local achievements and recognitions. Ann, you have anything? James?
For today.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the people who have already voted, the people who are working in the polling stations, helping the process. It's important, you know, we can argue till we're blue in the face about who to vote for, but the important thing is to vote. There's a lot of people out there who have sacrificed a great deal for this right for us to vote, and I just want to appreciate that everyone who has taken the effort to either facilitate the process or actually get out and participate.
Okay, the next item is a presentation by our lobbyist, Ronnie Book. Ronnie here? I don't see
No,
him.
not here
I don't
yet.
see him.
I did text to see what their ETA was, and I did talk to him about a week or so ago, so I heard he was on his way or going to be here, so.
Thought we were holding him off stage for a dramatic entrance or something, but, okay, well, we'll come back to Ronnie when he gets here. Okay, the next item is,
They're parking now, I just got an answer.
parking.
Parking.
They're almost in the lobby.
Okay, well,
Obviously, might be in the lobby.
Why don't we let Kathy go ahead, though, so she can get on her way?
in the lobby.
I think how long it's going to be. All right, well, we will start with Catherine then. Next item is the advisory committees, and we have one from the Anchorage Advisory Committee, Kathy Light. Her person.
I'm Catherine Light, Chair of the Anchorage Advisory Committee, and we had 2 items today that I sent you a letter about that I'm going to start with the strategic plan that we passed a motion to accept our strategic plan. Sorry it took us so long since we drafted it in February, but it is a work in process. We do approve going forward with it, and I see it's on your agenda to pass it today, to accept it. We have some things to change. As I said, it's a work in progress because of COVID. A lot of dates have to be changed of things we want to accomplish, and also there have been some personnel changes in the town, so we're going to have to kind of look at who's going to be responsible for some of the things, but otherwise we think it needs to be accepted. Any questions?
Questions of Catherine?
Got a couple, now, there are a couple things, though, it seems like you're pretty much ahead of the game, like, using the app, the already existing app to be able to book spaces. I think you had that scheduled for like 2021, and I think you're already pretty much on it, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, some things were ahead, certainly, yeah.
And I also noticed there's a couple of items in there that seem to be a recurring theme is about enhancing communication between your customers, the provider, and the town.
Yes.
Do you have like a methodology you're going to use to try to?
No, and we need to, that's something we need to work on, definitely. Don't have anything in place yet.
Good work, you and your committee. Okay.
I just had a question on the strategic plan. Kathy, did you have it with you?
Yes.
You have the part that talks about the mission statement? I couldn't find
Yes.
it in my packet this morning. There's a mission statement, and then next to it is a mission
Vision.
vision. Could you read the mission vision for me?
The mission, the Mooring Field mission is provide a safe and welcoming experience for mariners. And the Mooring Field vision is to be the preferred mooring destination in Florida.
I love the first one, and that makes sense, but I'm curious, the second one, and I'm not trying to be difficult, because I really think you've done great work, should that be our vision, that we should be the premier mooring field of all of Florida? In other words, if you think about that, and you think about what that would take to provide the kind of facilities, and obviously we would then theoretically be trying to incent as many folks to come here as possible. I'm just wondering, because you've got a lot of experience in this area, is that what is the ideal scenario to draw more people here and have it to be the sort of creme de la creme of all mooring fields? Is that good for economic development? Is it worse? Is there a good cost-benefit analysis in that bigger picture? Or should we just provide a nice, safe, clean environment for those who are here? You see what I'm saying? There's kind of a whole different, that's a very different vision than from the statement. I know one's a vision, one's a statement, but it just seems like if that's our goal, is that the intent of the advisory committee, to have it be the premier mooring field in all of Florida?
I think in the discussions that we had when we were coming up with that vision is, as you go through the objectives with customer experience, technology, growth, safety and security, we were looking at having the amenities that would be best in Florida. I mean, we're wanting to have better amenities that people are going to want to come here.
And I appreciate that, and that's fair. If that's what you're going for with the vision, that's great. I just read that a little bit differently, thinking that, hey, so the vision really isn't to really attract more people here through the mooring field. In other words, is the mooring field itself a good avenue for economic development? In other words, the more the better, or is there a certain capacity where it makes sense not to go above that capacity? If you look long-term of this, and we're talking about new facilities and how to accommodate everybody, should our goal be to double the size of it, get folks from a higher strata of income? I mean, what's the broader picture as you look at it 5-10 years from now?
We've over the past few years, during season, maybe a couple of months, we've come close to capacity. We have 70 balls out there. And I think part of our goal is to have people more of the year. And it is an economic advantage for the town, because the people come, they go to the restaurants, they shop, they spend money here. They don't just sit on their boats. A lot of them stay for several months at a time, or a week at a time. And so it's not usually just an overnight kind of thing. They stay here and then they go somewhere else. What we're looking at is having people stay here for a period of time, like we have at Red Coconut, or like we have in the condos, or like whatever we have. It's another avenue for people to spend a significant period of time and spend money and be here.
That's what I'm trying to draw out. So as we talk about doing new facilities, it's important to sort of talk about sort of what's the public interest in all of this? What's the public benefit? And we're just reciting that very well. I'm just trying to draw that out of you, I guess, is what I'm trying to do here.
Well, and the better facilities we have, the more people are going to want to come here. I mean, if we don't have really great facilities, then they might go to Sarasota, or they might go to Marco Island, or they might go somewhere else rather than stay here for a period of time. We might just be, as I said, an overnight to get to somewhere else. What we're looking at is having people come and spend a significant amount of time.
As you look 10 years from now, how many mooring balls do you think is the ideal number? And I guess is part of your broader thesis, long-term vision, you know, these are folks that come here who aren't clogging our highways and our roads and creating traffic. I mean, these are the kind of long-term talkers that we need to sort of think through as we're trying to pitch this investment to our community, I guess.
Well, and we are expanding our land lease with the potential that we might expand the field if the town feels it's economically feasible to do it. Now, as we're talking about expanding our facilities now, we really are underserved now for what we have. So we need to expand our facilities even for the 70 balls that we have. And then we're looking at a potential with the land lease that we're looking at expanding of another, I think it's 19. We have 70 now, we're looking at another 19, 20. But that's only if we are able to grow a longer term of people year-round. Right now, we don't have that, but we're hoping to if we can expand our facility.
That long-term growth is modest. It's 20 over the next maybe 5, 10 years. Is that fair?
Perhaps.
Okay.
I mean, and only if it looks economically feasible to do that.
So we're not trying to double or triple
No.
or, okay, I'm just trying to get a sense of the vision. All right, thank you.
Are there any more questions
Anything else for
on?
Catherine? Catherine, thank you very much.
I also have another thing that is in your letter, which is the upland service provider, that we've been talking about this for 2 years. And at the October meeting, we recommended that the town council consider pursuing the 2-unit option at Harbor House and all necessary inspections to be done to take the upland service provider in-house. And essentially we're recommending that we look into if it's feasible to do it with economically, with the permitting that we would have to do. That's our recommendation. And I don't know if there's any questions with that.
The size of the space.
We haven't gotten that far, and that's actually something we're going to be looking at too. It's interesting you brought that up because Chelsea has some interns that brought together some information from mooring fields around the state, which we have done that before 2, 3, 4 years ago to look at what our rates are, and we're on the bottom of the barrel with that. We're the lowest of those 6 or 7 places around the state. So we are going to be doing some thinking about a recommendation if we should raise our rates. But it really doesn't have much to do with the upland service provider. It's just what is happening around us. If that makes any sense to you?
I'm just thinking.
But we haven't raised our rates for 2 or 3 years, I think. And it's possible some of the others have done a yearly increase. We just haven't looked at that, but we are going to be doing that in the next couple months. Right now at Matanzas, we have 2 restroom shower facilities, and we're looking at wanting to expand to 6 or 7. When you think about 2 restroom showers for 70 balls, particularly in season, that's not very many. So that's part of the reason we're looking at it. And also part of the reason I think that we're asking to look, it's a 2-unit option rather than 1. I think if we only looked at 1, it wouldn't be enough of a growth. We also looked at Bay Oaks, but Bay Oaks, really, we did a kind of a comparison of Matanzas, Harbor House, Bay Oaks. Bay Oaks is just really a long way away. There's challenges about water access that might or might not happen. Harbor House is by our dinghy dock. It's down in the action with restaurant facilities and shopping and transportation. I know there's some concerns about that it is a condo area, and that was part of what needs to be looked into. No, we're recommending that the town go ahead and pursue this option and see if it's going to work for us.
Okay. Well, I, for one, would like to see some financials first, some, not only a rate study, but also maybe a lease versus own analysis, and all the other requisite performers that would have to be done prior to making this decision. So I'm sure those can be put together. Okay, anything else for Catherine? Thank you very much,
Thank you for
Catherine.
your time.
You bet, thank you. Okay, we'll go back now. This morning we have with us, if not world famous, certainly famous in the state of Florida, Mr. Ron Book, who I had the pleasure of serving with years ago, our lobbyist for the Florida Regional Councils Association. And Sherry Coven was the executive director. Ron, it's good to see you again, and say hello to the town council and tell us what you're doing.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. Mayor, council members, Mr. Manager, thank you. And I will tell you, first time, second time, 33 weeks I've had a suit on. So thank you, and it's actually the first appearance we've made in 33 weeks, so appreciate the opportunity. Our goal over the last 33 weeks has been to attempt to make sure that if somebody pivoted in Washington, if somebody coughed, sniffled, burped, did the same thing in Tallahassee, we were communicating to your manager, to you, what was going on. Our goal was, if a new executive order came out of somewhere, that we read it, dissected it, interpreted it, and got it to you before you could read it online in Politico or news service. It was our goal. We beat them at every turn. Didn't always make sense, what somebody may have done or not done. But our goal was to give it to you so that you could give it to your constituents before somebody else knew what was going on. But if there was a question, we got you the answer faster than anybody else could get you the answers. That was our goal. As we move now into this new period, and I'm not sure what the new period is, because I assume you all look at the same numbers we look at. At 9:30 or 10 o'clock every single day, 7 days a week, we get the numbers from the day before. And as you probably know, well, they call them the numbers from the day before. We know they're not the numbers from the day before. We know they might be 2-day, 3-day, 4-day old numbers. And in some instances, they've been several weeks old, depending on what a particular lab may have been holding. What we certainly know is that the numbers are going back up. Is it a surge? Is it temporary? I don't think any of us know. What I'm sure of is we're not going back to where we were. We're not going back to a complete closure. I doubt we're going back to partial closures. I think what occurs after the results of tomorrow, whether we know the results tomorrow night, or we know the results Thursday, Friday, Saturday, at some point we'll know whether there is short-term or long-term some potential new directions. We know that the governor continues to not want to reintroduce things that have expired. We know that he has toyed with eliminating the state of emergency altogether. We know that things at the Capitol have not gotten back to normal. The legislative session was supposed to end the week of March 10th, March 12th. We went into a 1-week extension. Our team went back. A couple of us stayed up. I left Tallahassee the afternoon of March 18th when they finished the vote on the budget. Normal people couldn't get into the Capitol that week. Period. Couldn't get in to watch the final vote on the budget unless you had a special pass. While we have continued through Saturday to have allowed virtual meetings to go on, if that was the desire of a particular local government, as of November 1, virtual meetings are over with. I do not expect the governor to reintroduce those. I've had the conversations with him directly. I've had so many conversations with his chief of staff, Shane Strum, that both of us are hoarse from the conversations about whether or not they should or shouldn't be extended. Depending on where you are in Florida, whether you're in Pensacola, or you're in Panama City, or you're in Tallahassee, or Jacksonville, or you're in Daytona, or Gainesville, you're at the Cape, you're in West Palm, you're in Southwest Florida, in Fort Myers, or Fort Myers Beach, or you're in the Florida Keys, or Miami-Dade, or Broward. Your opinion of whether or not virtual meetings should or shouldn't be allowed is different. Go over to Dade County, to the county commission, where 9 of their 13 commissioners are over the age of 65. The bulk of those 9 are over 70. All 9 have underlying health care issues. They don't want to meet in person. They are dealing with a new reality of, and I was fielding calls from them last night until almost midnight. I told them I was unwilling to call again because they begged for an extra month, went to the governor after making a beg in late August for a September extension. We made a deal in October, for October. I put him on the phone with the chair and the vice chair of those county commission efforts, where he said, it's it. Credibility and your word have to mean something. They bargained for a month, they got their month. I believe that their situation will be, they will meet as you're meeting today, but they will not have the public in. They will have the public meet elsewhere and address them in a virtual format, which is allowed because you do not need that so long as the meeting is open from a public perspective access-wise. Florida Capitol remains closed. None of us, without some special admission, get into the Capitol today. I had not had a cabinet meeting live in 7 months before 4 weeks ago. And they had that cabinet meeting, and we happened to have had an item that had been waiting 5 months to be heard. We couldn't get into the meeting to address the governor and cabinet. That creates challenges that all of us are going to have as time goes on. I think that the incoming presiding officers, Senator Simpson from Trilby and Representative Sprouse from the Pasco County area, and both of them represent a piece of Pasco, are settling in on what things are going to look like. For example, election is tomorrow. On November the 17th, we will meet in an organizational session where people will take the oath of office again. 120 House members, 20 senators, actually 22 senators will take the oaths of office. Historically, festive occasion. Houses and families, as you know, Mr. Mayor, all on the floor at this time. First time probably in 150 years of Florida history, houses and families will not be allowed into the chambers for the swearing ceremony. We're not going to let the public into the building unless there's a special pass. Current plan, although not chiseled in stone, will be to discourage people from coming to the Capitol. We'll have to have a specific appointment. We'll have to be on a list at a door of the Capitol. You will have to show up 30 minutes early, have your temperature taken, and to have a rapid test performed. That is the way right now they anticipate operating, not just in November and December, but in January and February, March, April, and May. Right now, that's the plan for the session. Right now, the plan for the session is to hold some type of a hybrid on committee meetings. They're going to let you in, if you're on that list, to go to a meeting. You're done with the meeting. If you're not on a list to meet somewhere else, you will be escorted out of the building. And they have committee meetings, and here's the challenge. And the challenge is going to come as much for local governments as it is for anybody. Because they're going to be addressing a few issues that are going to matter to you, substantively. Before I get to the budget, I think that there are a lot of people in the world of the league, ACT, School Superintendents Association, school board associations, that are ignoring the realities of what I believe substantively the House and the Senate are going to deal with as it relates to substantive issues. We haven't passed a tort reform bill since Jeb was governor. Senator Simpson has had on his priority list the 6, 8, 10 legacy issues that incoming presiding officers come with. This has been tort reform. Well, COVID hasn't thrown that off. It has, to some extent, heightened his interest in the issue. They've been cooking that tort reform bill for months. Now, there's a tort reform bill here, and then over here in an equal place, it's going to be a COVID liability reform bill. A lot of people aren't focused on either of them right now, and I'm not sure the league is, and I'm not sure FACT is, and I'm not sure that the school folks are either. But it affects you. Why? I'll come to COVID back in a minute. On simply the liability reform issue, for at least 5 years, they have been talking about changing the doctrine of sovereign immunity. I still remember a law review article I wrote on the doctrine of sovereign immunity way long ago in the 70s. It's all about protecting, back in time, King's money. King's money are those monies entrusted to local governments by the taxpayers to spend wisely and smartly. Therefore, we want to limit how much of those dollars are being paid out in claims, many times appropriately, but in many times in excess of what they ought to be. That's why we have a claims bill process. There are some people in the trial lawyer world want to abolish it. There are some who simply want to raise the caps. As you will recall, they raised the caps a couple of years ago as sort of a buy it off, be done with it. There are some who want to index it. I believe that those in the governmental world continue to ignore the fact that there's going to be a tort reform bill that may yet have some significant change. Sovereign immunity affects your bottom line, no matter what. Don't take my word for it. And maybe less in Fort Myers Beach than in Fort Myers, and maybe less in Fort Myers than in Sarasota, and maybe less in Sarasota County than in Miami-Dade, or in Duval, or Hillsborough, Nellis, and Orange. It'll have a negative fiscal impact if ultimately trial lawyers are able to go after local governments for unlimited sums of money. And you don't have a de novo review when somebody goes to the legislature for a claims bill. Or they raise the caps to 500 or 750, and then they index it. I'm simply saying to each of you, when you go, you talk, whether you're talking to your House members, talking to your Senate members, you're talking to your local league or your state league folks, I can tell you, I'm told that the Florida League has not made this their number one issue. That's a mistake. If I'm wrong and it's a false alarm, here's what I'm sure of. It's not a false alarm. If ultimately we rise and make it clear we're going to fight this to the death and we win that way, or they just don't move it, we've won. This isn't an issue where you're taking money out of your pocket and sacrificing it. You're saying a substantive issue is an issue you need a stiff arm out, 2 stiff arms out, and you need to stop it. And you need to stop it now, and you need to stop it into the future. We've had the dialogue about this issue now going on 5+ years. Amy Grant in the Florida House is not there anymore. The governor just made him the chief technology officer. It doesn't change the fact that the Florida House has been pushing that issue. If the Senate's been is going to push tort reform as a whole, the House is going to get something in the deal. They're the ones that have been pushing sovereign immunity. If they're going to have to give something away to the trial bar, the things they're taking away from trial lawyers with tort reform, we're the easiest sacrificial lamb that's out there, or so they think. COVID. At some point, I expect this COVID liability bill to probably merge into the tort reform bill. I don't know what COVID issues, Mr. Manager, you have. I don't know what COVID liability issues your risk management folks think are appropriate to deal with. But I know this. I know the trial lawyers are out with their magnifying glasses, their telescopes, and microscopes. And they're looking near and they're looking far. Try to determine where their best causes of action are going to come. And they're coming at us. They're coming at Florida businesses. They're coming at the community. As a whole, we need to figure that out. Because if we miss it, and they lodge a cause of action, and we have to wait a year to repeal it, to make a change, whether that change is a substantive change or that change is ultimately a procedural or an evidentiary change, we've certainly got to focus on it. We all know there are some markets out there that stay closed in an ordinate period of time. Some may have opened too early. Some may have stayed too late and they're out of business. But we have an obligation to watch out for the government and for your community. So as you, in the coming days and few weeks, each of you, need that back to the manager. We need that yesterday. You know, people think that when I say that we need that yesterday, Mr. Mayor, you know how we work. You've had an opportunity to watch us over the years. We try to stay 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps ahead of what everybody else is doing. And then when people catch up to us, we break the mold. We can want to get it back ahead. What we do for a living is how we do it. You know, we came to work here. We were afforded the privilege to represent you and your taxpayers. We'd gone a little bit of time without ever getting any money back from your state government. We're a donor community. We're entitled to get money back. So we've been successful in each of the last 3 years in getting you money back to your community where it belongs for important capital projects. We lost our money last year to the veto. So did everybody else. We were in there pitching to the very end, begging and pleading. We have spoken briefly to the manager. We would encourage you to bring forth, in spite of everything you're hearing out there about no money, if you don't have an ask in, they find some, here's what you'll get. 2 eggs. You have something in, they're in the hunt. Lee County has a new, fresh, growing, in stature delegation. You've got players in your delegation. Some gone out, new ones come in. Some went out, new ones came in to train. Now you've got some more new ones coming in. You've got players. You've got players because they had a foundation of folks that served the Lee County, Collier County area. And by the way, so that we're clear, Collier County lawmakers see no boundaries between Collier and Lee, and the Lee lawmakers see very little boundary between Lee and Collier. That works for you. Why does it work for you? Because you're going to have a Senate president whose home is in Collier County. He cares as much about what happens in Fort Myers Beach as Elizabeth Benaquisto did, as Ray Rodriguez does. That's good for the region because it's good for Southwest Florida. You may tell me when the last presiding officer came out of Southwest Florida? Anybody remember? Anybody? Me either. I've been doing this for 47 years, and I don't remember. I don't think we've ever had one. And if we did, it was so long ago, it was before I was born. It's your time. And let me say this. The good thing about what you have going on, you've already got someone or someones coming in as a freshman, already looking to compete to be a presiding officer designate in the Florida House. That's how you win as a community. It's happening for you. And that's good stuff. So our suggestion has been a project that's not simply the so-called shovel-ready, but permittable shovel-ready. Project that puts people to work, a project that's public works related. As we drove in, we were certainly, Mr. Manager, not unmindful of the road work being done. If we had a road project, it would be our preference to put it forward. Why? Because the governor has been clear. I want to advance fund as many transportation projects as I can because it puts more people back to work per dollar than anything else we as a state government can fund. Doesn't change the fact that state, local, and federal gas tax revenues are off. We all know the trust funds are off. That trust fund is deep, and it can borrow. It's deep. We need to get it. They have kept arms off the last 5 years when they've been sweeping the Sadowski Act Trust Fund and a few others. They've left the Transportation Trust Fund alone. It is sacred. Can't find a transportation project, and while I would prefer it to be somewhere in the 5-year plan, just grab the 5th year and move it to year 1 so it's in the work plan, it doesn't have to be. I'd prefer it, or I'd prefer working to try to get it on the MPO, TPO list. Doesn't have to be. Or a good solid water project that is ready to be permitted. The engineering is done or in the process of being completed, and we're ready to go. It needs to be something just south of $500,000. $138,221, $483,507. I want an odd number mix with a real local match. You know how I feel about local matches. It's what gives us leverage with the appropriators. That's what we would encourage you to do. One, and then a second one that we're going to hide deep in our pocket. Not going to. We think any city that files more than one project is making a terrible diminishing return result. We believe that says we're tone deaf, we're hearing deaf, we don't hear, we don't see, we don't understand. That's why we're doing one. The reason we want the spare is if we need to call an audible on your behalf, because it appears clear this budget silo isn't going to get an allocation of money for projects, but this one is. And we believe that it is one of those two silos that have the best opportunity to get some level of funding. Let me tell you about money. So, the state's got at least $4 billion in reserves. They've probably got the 400, 800, 900, another billion one, between other little pots that they haven't moved over into GR, into rainy day fund, into reserve, and they've got a monster amount of CARES Act dollars that they've chosen not to send to you or any of the other cities in the state. Yeah, the entitlement jurisdictions got their money. We didn't get our share. I don't know, Manager, whether you've gotten any CARES Act monies back yet. They've held them. One of the things they started to do 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks ago is they started to call counties. I suspect they've called Roger Desjardins, and they've said, hey, Roger, I'm making this up. So, hey, Roger, we got $43 million in CARES Act money that you're entitled to. Would you like that money? Roger says, yeah, Mr. Director of Emergency Management, I need that money. Well, Mr. Desjardins, that's fine. But you know those little test centers that we're running, those test sites? Well, we need you to take those over. We need you to eat the cost of them. We'll get you your test kits. The test kits aren't what's costing the money. And you got to hire 48 RNs and 85 CNAs to run those sites 8 or 10 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week. Again, I've already said, here's what we're sure of. We know that the number of tests done a day diminished 45 days ago dramatically. We know the state shut some sites, curtailed some sites. I know this. I know that when I drive on the turnpike, and I pass Hard Rock Stadium, I know when the numbers are going up. You know how I know? Because the line is out off of County Line Road, and it's out off of Ives Dairy Road, and it's extending 2 miles and 3 miles for people to drive in. I know when I turn on the news at night, and I see a line that's 400 or 500 deep, and they shut the line off and sent everybody else away, I know the numbers are up. And so the problem is, you're now agreeing to eat this, and you don't have any idea how long it's going to go. And I haven't seen yet today's numbers from yesterday, but we know those numbers will be down because we know Saturday, Sunday numbers that come in on Mondays are always down, and then they start going up Wednesday and Thursday into Friday. What was Friday's number from Thursday? 5,500 and change. Saturday's number from Friday was 5,100, I believe. Yesterday's number was 43 or 4,400 from Saturday. If you go back 13 days, start looking at it, and they're all published, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's been this steady increase. In fact, I haven't looked at the graph, but I won't be surprised if I looked at the 3-week graph going back to April compared to now, if the percentage isn't greater from an increase on a basis. Look, hospitalizations are down. We know that. That's good. That's the barometer that the experts tell us we need to pay attention to. They've gotten better. I listened to a story on the ride over here, Mount Sinai Medical Center on Miami Beach, talking about how they're getting people in and moving them out in 48 hours. That they've gotten better in their treatment protocols. We know today that remdesivir works. We know today that the first thing you shouldn't do is immediately put people on a ventilator. We figured that out. But how long did it take us to figure it out? I can't speak for you all. I know an awful lot of people got sick, had sick. I know several who didn't make it. When you lose that first person who's close to you, you realize how serious it is. And it's somebody that was healthy, might have been a little older, but was healthy. He's healthy. He's gonna live forever. This particular gentleman was a doctor, spent 8 weeks in an ICU unit, 3 negative tests, came off of the vent, had a trach inserted, died a week later from kidney failure caused by COVID. We know it's bad. But we can't close up the world and shrink into the ground. We have to figure out whatever the new normal is. I don't certainly have the answers, and I've spent the last 33 weeks trying to consume everything that I could consume, trying to help our clients get what PPE they needed, get test sites open when they needed them, get access when they needed them, to be offensive in the things we did on our clients' behalf. And as we move in, the end of the year, first of the year, we're ready to go to Tallahassee. We want to be ready to go. We have a project. We want to be ready to go on COVID liability, tort liability. We think there'll be some other substantive issues. I'll tell you in closing, Mayor, council members, Mr. Manager, up until 10 days ago, I was convinced, Ronna will tell you, that they were going to have a very limited substantive bill agenda. I spent a couple hours with incoming Speaker Sprowls last week. There is no question he plans on hearing plenty of bills on plenty of subject matters and not going to limit himself. One last thing, because I don't know how much pre-K to 12 you want to hear from me about, but I'm remiss if I don't at least mention. I expect pre-K to 12 to get terribly underfunded by Tallahassee this year. We had a record year last year, starting salary increases, pension stuff that they did, but I think they're going to seriously underfund and then drive it down locally. And a significant increase in what's known as the RLE, which is the required local effort for those less familiar with the funding formulas of capital. I don't know how or why people think local folks don't understand when they force a tax increase down locally, they're going to force a tax increase locally in the area of school taxes. None of us know today, through some crystal ball, how much student count is going to decrease. I can't speak for you. I've got 3 grandchildren. With one daughter who's got 3-year-old twins, and I got a 6-year-old grandson with another daughter. We didn't like the idea of building classrooms in one of our houses. We did. We didn't like hiring a full-time teacher for the first grader and a preschool full-time teacher for the others, but we did. We made a full 1-year commitment to it. Very expensive commitment. There are lots of other people that have done the same, and there are lots of other people who are just educating their children through virtual school. How many of those kids are not going to go back? We don't know. What they're going to do is just leave it to locals. You decide. You figure it out. That's a tax increase where I come from. The last issue that does apply to you is pension reform. And I expect pension reform to come back. I expect it to be a significant issue. It is an incompleted issue in Senator Simpson's mind. He took that issue on as the first issue his first year in the Senate. He plans to come back to it. He does not believe they adequately dealt with it. He believes there are still a lot of abuses out there. Whether there are or they're not, I'm not here to comment one way or the other on. I can tell you he's focused in a big way on continued pension reform. Again, Mayor, council members, Roger, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And I did not introduce Ronna Brown. Manager knows Ms. Brown. She does an enormous amount of your day-to-day work. She is, every client in our firm has 2 folks engaged. Mayor knows Ms. Brown from Regional Planning Council world. She happens to do all of our local government work with me. Other lobbyist in the firm does not do nearly as much local work. She does more health care and some of our other issues like that. With that, thank you again, and I'm happy to address whatever questions you're willing to throw.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Ron. Thanks. Hang around for a minute here. Thank you for your presentation. Probably the most dramatic we've had in these chambers in some time. So questions for Ron?
Yep. Mr. Book, first of all, thank you for your time this morning. Thanks for coming all the way down here. I want to respectfully encourage you as you go back to Tallahassee and you could talk to the various folks that you talk to, is that you've laid out a litany of issues which are important, and I'm glad you're worrying about them on our behalf. But there's an issue that I think I speak for my colleagues that we're worried about that I did not hear this morning. That's the quality water issue. Do you know, 2018, we were devastated. And the governor, to his credit, the new governor came in, $2.5 billion 4-year plan. We got 682, when we're supposed to just get 625 the first year, which was great on the legislature's behalf, great on the governor's behalf. This past year, under the COVID pressures and the various budget challenges, the governor prioritized clean water again. We got 625 again. Of course, we got a national election, we got state elections. Next year, there's no elections. We need another 625 million from the state to stay on track. Of course, that 682 million initially in the first year leveraged for the second time in 25 years, $200 million in federal funds, which was spectacular. I'm curious, today is to the second year of the leveraging of those federal funds. Where is that at? Second of all, I want to convey to you, just to get you up to speed on what we're hoping to do come February. We've set some money aside for a town-wide advocacy program. I call it the Snowbird Advocacy Army, where we're going to be doing mail pieces to all of our snowbirds who come down here while they're here, encouraging them to write their members of Congress, whether it be in Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, wherever they're coming from, make the pitch for the importance of clean water, make the ask, which will be coming to you for some language on, specifically what they should co-sponsor at the federal level, who they should contact, what action item we want at the federal level. But also, I hope to start something called the Floridian Reserve Army, or Advocacy Army, where we get our local Floridians who come to Fort Myers Beach, bless their heart, and they spend their money, and they come here so they can contact their various state legislators around the state. And so we plan on doing 3 direct mail pieces to every household on the island, plan on doing some paid media, maybe full-page ads in the local papers, and really hitting folks hard. And the concept is, picture Uncle Sam up there on the postcard, and Fort Myers Beach wants to enlist you in the fight for clean water. Here's how you can help. And we'll list how to find your member of Congress, how you find your state senator, tell them here's how you need to make your letter, to explain why water is important to you, whether it be for fishing, recreation, for the environment, for marine life, whatever's important to you. And then here's the action item we need. And then please reach out and mail us a copy of the response you get so we can track all of this. Anyways, the reason why this is so important, I think with your experience you'll appreciate this, is that next year is going to be different because we've had the benefit of some national election pressure and some statewide election pressure and some state legislative pressure to really put the heat on our elected officials, and they've delivered. But in those non-election cycles, people lose track. The governor, to his credit, fought to keep the 625, but we need 625 next year. Can you talk a little bit about where you see these issues coming, both at the state and federal level, and how we can best, based upon what I discussed with you, how we can help?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, there are about 18 questions within that. Let me attempt to get
I heard 20.
to them. Somewhere, I lost count. Let me try to get to the meat of it. So first of all, we're light years ahead of where everybody else is. Nobody that I know of in any local government talking about any of the water-related issues. And I don't talk about water quality the way some do. Some on the eastern seaboard lump water quality in with climate change related issues. I do not. I think they're very separable issues. And I think if we don't keep them separated, they will get mired in the politics of what climate change is or isn't. And I'm certainly not denying climate change is an issue. It is. I just see water quality different. And I think so how you message that and how your constituents message that is critically important. And whether you're messaging that to your state lawmakers or you're messaging that to your congressional and U.S. Senate leaders, it doesn't really matter. Look, Rick did a good job on environment. DeSantis is just taking it one step further. I don't know what printing several $1 trillion is going to do to us after the first of the year. None of us know what inflation means or doesn't mean. Nobody really knows how much more money Washington may decide to print in January, February, and March, which will have a direct impact on this. I'm worried about, as I mentioned, pre-K to 12 funding. They're going to get hurt. Does that mean that in that $4 billion of reserves, that extra billion or so that I think is there, give them a total of $5 billion, which means they could take a couple of billion and pump that couple of billion of non-recurring into potentially some recurring expenses? Yes. Does that mean they'll take $625 million and plunk it back into the water quality? I don't know. I don't know. I got you, and I hear you as to the priority. I would be misleading you if I told you I thought that was where they were. However, let me give you some real encouragement. I think that there are some folks in leadership that matter, that believe they've spent some environmental money on some things they don't subscribe to. They don't believe that where Senator Bradley, Senator Galvano, Senator Negron spent environmental money is where the current thinking of the legislature is. I think you're going to see a bundle of environmental money which comes out of the same silo of where you need the water quality money to come from, coming back into that silo. I can tell you, I've listened ad nauseum to their wanting to grab back commitments that have been made in the northern part of the state and bring it back from the center south. That would include water quality opportunity dollars. I think that no one should be unmindful of where the governor's poll numbers are. No one should be unmindful. Actually, let me hit pause. I didn't say one word about the elections. Notice I avoided it. Let me inject just one piece. Happy to answer questions, but I've avoided it. I believe that the Florida House will remain firmly in Republican control. Do I believe that they will lose some Republican seats in the Florida House? I do. Will they lose 3, 5, 6, 7? Yeah, I think so. I think that you normally hear lots of spark money coming in from the Republicans that the Democrats are always screaming and yelling about. Let me tell you something. This left ear, for $12 million of dark Democrat money coming in, posting up in state house races. Manager, there's a guy in Miami-Dade County by the name of Vance Lupus. Young guy who is slated to chair the 12 Budget Committee in the House easily for the next 2 years, likely the next 4. They pumped $1.7 million the last 3 weeks of the campaign to take that Republican House member out who is absolutely, other than the speaker designate that Miami-Dade has with Danny Perez, the best lawmaker to come out of Miami-Dade in a really long time. But they want to take him out. They've done the same thing to a woman by the name of Fedorov, Lucia. They've done the same thing against a woman Republican in Hillsborough. All of these were very close Republican-controlled seats but very close in performance. They did the same thing in the Gainesville race, a guy by the name of Chuck Clements. The same thing in a race south of there in Ocala with a guy by the name of Killebrew. They did the same thing in Seminole County, the guy by the name of Cortez. They'll likely lose all those races, or a good number. They won't get control of the House. Maybe they take the Republican numbers down 65 or 66 from 73. They'll be in control. Senate, where if you listen to the blusteriness of an incoming leader on the Senate side, on the Democratic side, it would lead you to believe they're going to win 3 seats or 4 and take them away from the Republicans. I hate to tell him, but I don't see the map that way. I see Republicans in the Senate potentially being up a net 1. They may stay stationary. I don't think they lose any ground. They got 23 votes now. I don't see those changes happening. So I see those presiding officers, councilmen, I see them doing what I've described to you, getting these monies back in and spending it as they want to. So, federal level for just a minute, I think your focus is right. Because I think that no matter who controls the House and the Senate, and I don't expect Pelosi to lose control. Wish I did, don't see it. I think the fear is the Senate could flip. I think it's a toss-up going into tomorrow. But I don't think on water quality it matters. Because I think both sides of water quality are in the same place. I might want to spend more or less, a couple of dollars less, but I think they're in the right space and in the right place. Right? But I see another follow-up to that, so
I don't want to
If I
take too
could,
much,
Mayor.
no, I don't want to take too much time. I just want to,
I think it's a good subject.
as you talk to the governor's chief of staff, Mr. Strum, and as you talk to Mr. Sprouse, who's really talked about how the COVID's going to adversely impact the budget, you anecdotally, as you say, you've just kind of gotten out, you're on the hustings again. You go back and talk to all these leaders and you say, I gave this beautiful speech, and it was a beautiful speech, on tort reform and COVID and K through 12 and special local projects. The first question out of the box
Water.
was on water. That's all I asked. But thank you for your service. Thanks for your help for the town.
Mayor, through you again, Councilmember, I will.
Thank you.
I will,
Appreciate it.
to both Chris and to Shane.
Excellent. Thank you.
And then, Ronnie, if you're talking to the folks over in Martin County, you might tell them that we're on the same page. When you're over in Martin and
Your friend Commissioner Smith?
Palm Beach and so forth, just tell them we're all on the same page, and any other questions for Mr. Book? I always feel, go ahead, Bill.
Go ahead.
So do you deal strictly with Tallahassee, or do you also deal on the federal level?
I was going to come back to that, so thank you for asking the question. My representation of you is at the state level, and primarily if you have a Lee County issue, I'm engaged on those. I'm not sure before today I realized you didn't have Washington representation. That was the question I asked Rhonda to check with the manager. Look, we don't do DC on a daily basis. We know all the members of your congressional delegation. We know both of the senators intimately well, and we play in the arena, but not because we work up there. We will get on a plane and we go to DC for our clients, get here, and we move things. To manager. Yes, sir. Whatever you need us to do with our congressional delegation, we are happy to do. It costs you no more money. You don't, for the record, so that everybody out there hears it. Don't charge by the hour, charge by the job, and it's all inclusive. Don't send you add-ons. You ask about federal, done. Part of the deal. We are happy to engage, set meetings here, up there, go with you, do whatever you need us to do. Don't get an extra bill for that. The answer is yes.
I'm just aware that, there's the water bill this year that's in the federal level, and that includes lobbying for a clause to change the allocation strategy for the lake, which would force the lake to be managed more for agriculture, and which would mean more detrimental water flows coming down our river. And it seems to me, and all the talk about money that Commissioner or Councilor Adderholt's talking about, that sometimes it takes one political decision to make all that millions and millions of dollars fairly irrelevant. So what's going into the lake now has a lot of nutrients, and when they come our way, we have the effect. We had, since they changed the allocation last year, and we've had a really good summer. For the first time that I've been here, it's been pretty clear through most of the year. We're just starting to get some more of the tannins and the dark water now. But you know, sometimes a little political decision can really wipe out a lot of prudent fiscal spending.
Well, I think your gains are probably not unnoticed by some of the farm and ag interests that exist to the sort of northeast of here.
That.
No, they're not my clients, but yes, I do.
That's what
Your concern, justifiable, as I listen, and it is. And I would say to you, substantively, that is the dialogue I want to have with the Byron Donaldses of the world and the like as they go up.
House Bill, that's it? Councilman.
They both cover what I wanted to ask, so we won't rehash it.
I think you can tell, Ronnie, where our main issue is with the water. I mean, we've been able to experience a couple of good years. The real issue with the water funding of sending the water south from the lake down back to where it's supposed to go. We all know that in accordance with the releases that are the pulsing releases that are coming out now. But, Roger, do you have any questions for Ron while he's here, or comments, or?
I'm just gonna say a couple of short things, not necessarily policy issues, but just to reassure you, Ron and I have known each other for a long, long time, probably in the neighborhood of 30 years. And whenever I have a question or an issue on any matter, both at the state and federal level, I know I can go to Ron, and I know that he can either get me the answer, get me the information, arrange who we need to talk to, or tell us who we need to approach for help if it isn't him. So I think we're very fortunate to have him working for us, and I value his professional assistance and his friendship all these years.
I'll reiterate those comments. It's good to see you, Ron, and I always feel like I've been to church after I've listened to your presentations here.
Let me say last thing to you, Mayor, on the way out the door.
Yes, sir.
We should all pay attention over the next 30 days. Obviously, election comes and goes. But the day after the election, Wednesday, the race will be on to become the new chair of the Congressional U.S. House of Representatives Appropriations Committee. One thing I am sure of, there's going to be a new appropriations chair. That is the most powerful position in the Congress. It is as powerful as Nancy Pelosi's job is, because you're writing that budget. You're telling those other cardinals that chair those subcommittees what is and what isn't going in that budget. You get that chairmanship, you keep it so long as your party's largely in control. Since Bill Young was chair over a decade ago, we have not had a chair of the U.S. House Appropriations Committee. It's our last. And it's more than 10 years ago now. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, all of her left leanings, cares about water quality.
Right.
Water quality. I can assure you, she's in the mix. Only 3 people running to be appropriations chair. She's raised millions of dollars for her colleagues across the country. So if she ultimately ends up there, Mayor, it is going to be my advice to you, come across the alley, and you sit in her office over there in Broward County, and you talk about what matters to your county. It'll matter to her.
May go over before that, Ronnie. But anyhow, okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your time. Thank you for all your good work on behalf of the town. Rhonda, good to see you. Rhonda as well. Thank you very
What's
much.
the quality of the water? Where's
Ah,
Where does our look?
that stuff will kill you. Don't drink too much of it. Okay.
We've been spending time in Zephyr Hills because they come and Senate President is from Kobe, which is right there. I check the quality of that water every time.
Good for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, unless, you all want to take a 5-minute break, or you want to keep going? To you.
Good.
We'll keep going, okay. Okay, the next item is the approval of minutes. We've got the October 15th Management and Planning Session, and also the October 19th regular council meeting. Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
I have one change to the Management and Planning Council.
Okay,
Page 3, section E, it said that I mentioned that the attorney would be on a retainer. I was asking if the attorney would be on a retainer.
okay, so noted. Is there a motion to approve those minutes with that correction made?
Move to adopt October 15th and October 19th minutes with Bill's amendment.
Second?
Second.
Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Any objection? Minutes are approved. Next, we go on to public hearings. And the first one is the variance 202-00036, which is 5043 Williams Drive. Yes, Ron.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, John.
the next two items on the agenda are quasi-judicial in nature. Therefore, it would be appropriate to swear in the witnesses at
Okay.
this time.
Go ahead.
Who's going to testify? Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth? And then with regard to the first item, to disclose any ex parte communications you may have had.
Any ex parte communications?
Did drive-bys on both?
Dan?
Drive-bys on both, yeah.
Site visit.
Bill?
Both site visit on both.
I have none. Okay, we'll start with the first one, 5043 Williams Drive. Is there a staff report, or is it? Yes, sir.
Carl, introduce the item.
Carl.
So the first.
That mic is on.
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure.
Just press the little thing that looks like the Wi-Fi on
And it
the
looks
dead
like
center.
Wi-Fi.
Is it green?
Takes a little while to
It'll
fire
come
up.
on.
Okay.
Have that handheld mic?
Have them go to the middle podium.
Okay, it's good now. All right. So a bit of the property information. The home was built in 1998. The current owners bought it in 2002, and it's zoned residential single family. So there's two variance requests being done. The first one is to allow the principal structure to encroach all side setbacks. And the second one is to allow the accessory structure to be located closer to the street right away than the primary structure. The first variance is seeking a variance from table 34-3 of the LDC. What they're asking for is a 0.1-foot variance from the 25-foot street setback, 4.8-foot variance from the 25-foot rear setback, and 0.6-foot variance for the 7.5-foot setback on the south side. The second variance is for the accessory structure, and they're asking for a 0.1-foot to encroach the street setback of 25 feet. There is a picture of the property. The findings can be found on page 24 of the packet. Staff finds that all the renovations have been done through permits through Lee County. And therefore, staff determines that the current setback discrepancies could be a construction error. The recommendations are found on page 25 of the packet. Staff recommends approval with conditions that the single-family home be allowed to be 20.2 feet away from the seawall, 6.9 away from the southern property line, 24.9 from the street setback. LPA recommendations pretty much are okay with it. They say that all of it was done prior to 2000, and they do approve with conditions. And the conditions are basically that variance have to be approved, and that the variance is applied to the setbacks that are identified on the 6/2019 survey, and that if any damage happens to principal structure, the setbacks can be reset.
Briefly, Mr. Mayor, I think this is your first time presenting before council.
It is.
Who are you and what's your background, and welcome?
My name's Carl Bench. I'm the Assistant Director for Community Development. I have a background in construction, and I have a master's degree in planning, and I just came from the city of
Where?
Northport.
Oh, very good. Well, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Welcome. Yeah.
Did identify himself when he stood up.
Just to know who he was, yeah.
A couple of quick questions. So the variances are, how many of these variances are not changing from what they're replacing?
Three of the variants, so out of all three, or out of four sides, three of them need to be adjusted.
Right, but now, some of them are replacing things that existed, right?
They're all existing.
Okay.
All the structure is existing as it is. They're just going to upgrade to fix the screen and stuff like that. In order to do that, they need to get these passed because they're encroaching in the setbacks currently.
There's no additional encroachments based on this from what
No.
exists?
No, it's already existing, correct.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Mr. Reckland, you're going to represent yourself? Okay, go right ahead.
I'm here basically because we went to an architect and he had us do a survey, a plat survey, and they found these things outside of the code. And it was his recommendation, we get the variances before we proceed with our upgrades. Upgrades aren't really gonna take us out of code anywhere. Everything that I'm asking for pretty much has been that way for the last 20-some years.
Okay, so you're in agreement with the staff recommendations?
Excuse me?
Are you in agreement with the staff recommendations on the
I think
conditions?
so.
So, okay. Okay, any questions from Mr. Reichland?
What are the natures of, what are you doing? It's
Well,
really not clear here.
We've got a lanai upstairs and we want to put a roof over that, okay? I want to put an elevator in and enclose an entrance. Okay, we're getting older, don't like going up the steps with the groceries. And then just improve the inside, redo the kitchen. Such.
Okay?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just to be clear, this is a situation that we're finding as we review applications that come in that the prior paperwork wasn't perfected, and this is an opportunity to perfect it, and it offers the property owner assurance that what they have, what they're about to build, will be in compliance and won't be subject to subsequent interpretation of not being in compliance. So that's why we recommend that they come in and get things cleaned up. And we appreciate this family doing that, even though it's pretty much as it was built. But the record behind it didn't show that approval, so now he'll have it, assuming you vote in the affirmative.
I want to commend your architect, Mr. Reichland, for pointing that out.
I have to apologize, I'm really hard of hearing and hearing aids don't help me.
Okay. I forget it. No, just, I want to commend your architect for recommending that you come forward with this thing to straighten out your paperwork.
Start out clean.
And, yeah, and exactly, and you're doing the right thing, and you'll always appreciate it, and so will we. So thank you very much.
Okay, am I done now with this?
I think you are.
All right,
but-
do I get any paperwork or anything?
Hang around for a minute or so, we'll
All right.
formalize this. Okay, we'll close that part of the hearing. Any discussion up here? Okay, is there a motion to approve the staff recommendations?
Make a motion to approve variance 202-00036 with the staff and LPA recommendation.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Does this require a roll call? Does not.
It doesn't require a roll call, but I just, that the council finds that the applicant has met all the criteria for the granting of the variance.
Yes. Thank you for adding that. Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Reichland. We'll move on to the next one, which is variance 202-00052, which is for 4690, 4700 Estero Boulevard.
Something sent to me.
Carl, you're up again.
How you doing? Carl Benj, Community Development. Like we said, this is for variance 202-00052 to allow an accessory structure to be located closer to the street right-of-way than the principal structure.
Carl, before you go on, you want to do your thing, John, first, before?
I'm sorry, yes. Witnesses have already been sworn in, so it would be appropriate for you all to disclose any ex parte communications at this point.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
None.
Site visit.
Site visit.
Go ahead, Carl.
Okay? A little background. The lot was developed in 1940, and it's currently zoned residential conservation and environmentally critical zoning. The applicant is seeking a variance to allow the accessory structure to be located closer to the street right-of-way than the principal structure. This will allow a detached garage, a storage room, elevated pool deck, and a tiki hut to be approximately 60 feet from the street right-of-way. Here's a site plan showing the current site. The big blank square in the front is the location that they're talking about. And the applicant, again, is seeking a variance to allow the accessory structures actually ahead of the pool. The findings can be found on page 54 to 55 in your packet. The staff recommendation can be found on page 56. The staff recommends approval with conditions of the variance to allow the accessory structure to be close to the street right-of-way or street easement of the principal structure. Staff recommended 6 different recommendations. LPA only went with the first 5. Staff's 6th recommendation is the roofed accessory structure shall not be located closer than the swimming pool, hot tub, or the right-of-way of Estero Beach. And this, we're asking that the tee hut be next to the pool instead of in front of the pool.
Front of the pool meaning closer to the road or
Closer to the road, correct. Again, the LPA recommended 1 through 5. Their conditions and approval, which are here. The first one says that they have to have their plans reviewed. Then the third one is a variance showing that we're using the site plan submitted 5/11/20. Number 4 is that there be a buffer, a type B buffer, and then number 5 be that there's a height on the accessory structure.
Thank you, Carl. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if this goes to you or not, Carl. This is the second time I've seen this happen when it comes before us, that the LPA takes out a condition and the resolution we're presented with matches the LPA recommendation with that removed. And that doesn't seem right to me. If staff is coming to us with 6 things, we get to decide finally, with all due respect to the LPA, whether that 6th thing stays in or not.
Correct. It'll be amended based on the decision that the council reaches today. The question is, in the draft resolution,
Right.
prospectively, would you prefer to see
I prefer to see the
staff recommendation
staff recommendation
versus
because
the LPA
there's an
recommendation?
implication here that the LPA is taking precedence by going ahead and removing.
We could prepare it either way. So whichever way the council prefers, we'll be glad to prepare it that way.
I'd like to think about that for a second, because the LPA spends hours studying these things in great detail, taking the public input. I think we need to know the difference, I agree with that, but I don't have a concern that the LPA's priorities come first, because they've reviewed it, they've studied it, they've made the recommendations to us. We don't have to accept it, but
I see it being very easy that the resolution goes through and gets signed with stuff not being added back in. To me, it shouldn't be taken out just based on the LPA's recommendation. We should get a resolution of what was initially presented to the LPA. And I guess my secondary question is, I don't see any explanation of why the LPA took it out.
So in our original staff report, we leave what we recommend in. We add another section saying what the LPA did. So if you look at the original staff report, we
But
have
I'm
our
looking at the
original 6.
resolution. The resolution is the thing that gets signed and becomes the law of the case.
Right. So, Madam Vice Mayor, we have no preference. We just taken, at least in these items, have taken the thing that we presented our position to the LPA. They're your committee. They're making a recommendation to you, and that's why currently the resolution reflects that. But if you were to vote staff's recommendation, it's the clerk's job, my job, and John's job to make sure that that's the solution.
Get that. It just seems appropriate to me that the resolution we're presented with should be what the original concept was.
Let's be clear, staff has not changed its recommendation.
It appears that way when you look at this.
So just to be
So-
clear, the staff has not changed its recommendation.
Right.
Which is why we also included in the presentation of the number, they took out number 6 and what was the
Right.
roof structure. We don't change it, we just add on what they suggested later. It says, gives like a both perspective. Our suggestions were.
Any further questions for Carl?
Well, I didn't get an answer. Why did the LPA take out number 6?
I don't think they felt that it was, they just didn't agree with that one of the other.
Why did the town put in number 6?
Because our recommendation is that the tiki hut be next to the pool and not in front of the pool. Actually,
Yeah, sorry, Jason Green, Community Development. To that point, because of the 60-foot setback currently, that's what my understanding of summarizing LPA's feeling is that 60 feet was sufficient from the right-of-way of what is proposed. And our point on that, we talk about de minimis and minimizing the amount of the variance. That's why we
What is the setback, if it's in front of the pool, what is the setback between this structure and the road
their current proposed would be 60.
with the building?
Correct. You're just taking it from the technical standards of the variance require you to try to minimize hearing by locating it adjacent to, then both of those.
Another question, Steph, got you here.
Sorry to cut off Carl, but
Carl,
I was part of the presentation.
Okay, has there been a study, it seems like a lot of impervious surface is going on here, is there a study about the drainage from these structures, and they're gonna go because they're taking out a lot of green space and putting in pavers and?
Any submittal will have to meet the requirements from the town drainage and stormwater and impervious surfaces. So they'll have to provide.
That'll be in the building permit stage.
Madam Vice Mayor, is your question answered? Yes or no?
Not really. I really don't understand.
in
that-
fairness to Jason, it's not his, it's really our preference here.
No,
It is, I honestly do this.
There's two different
the
questions
jurisdiction
here.
does it
That's
differently,
true. There is
so.
two different questions, yeah.
What I don't understand is, I don't understand why the LPA took it out or That's the part I,
Well, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, what we can tell you is that we're reading into their mindset, but what we think is they felt that being far enough back, they're still far enough back from the setback back that it wasn't bad. We feel that you should be as close to compliance in the code as you possibly can be. So that's the two differences of opinion.
I guess it would be my preference that we put number 6 back in then. If the law says that a variance is supposed to be de minimis, and the recommendation made by our professional staff is to make it the most de minimis, then I would be in favor of putting 6 back in.
You have the applicant. They're going to make a presentation.
I think, without having heard from the applicant yet, I think the whole process of getting a variance is to sort of infuse some sort of common sense into some of these equations that doesn't often enter in. So I would reserve judgment on this particular issue, but I do appreciate the fact that the LPA heard all this, use some common sense into the process, and sometimes staff doesn't have that liberty. I mean, they do, but they don't, but it's a little easier for the LPA to do that. So I wouldn't diminish what the LPA does in terms of trying to be practical in some of these sometimes difficult situations.
Okay. Are there any other questions for either Jason or Carl? If not, we'll listen to the applicant. Ms. Metcalf? Hi.
Morning to the mayor.
More.
If any questions, my name is Claudia Metcalf. I can't.
Anyone have any questions? Are you in agreement with everything that's been,
I am. I just wanted to mention with the drainage, I don't intend to put any pavers anywhere. It's just broken shell. And the structure is really tiki. Literally don't think that would.
okay. Any other questions for Ms. Metcalf?
Does it matter to you that the structure, either way, when we were talking about number 6, if it's on the side, or what was the reasoning of why you wanted it?
I mean, I've been pondering over these plans for years and years and years. And I did look at it many different ways, and the way the plot is structured, it really lends itself better, because then I can landscape on the sides and around to the road, also between the car and the structure itself. And also I intend to make this little courtyard feeling, which the pool is helped by the tiki structure, and the house. On the side, it really doesn't work.
Any other further questions for Ms. Metcalf? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Points up because we have some pictures of.
You have to identify yourself, sir.
Okay, yeah, sure. For the record, my name is Fred Drovlik. I am a certified planner, work for Waldrop Engineering, and in planning in Southwest Florida since 2004. And here representing Ms. Metcalf for this variance. If the yeah, and I have the proper date. Okay. Places don't allow me to do that because of, virus on here or something. A COVID virus, you know what I'm talking about. So what I'll be able to do, and I'll just obviously skip through the rest of the presentation, go right to, we have 2 pictures and kind of elevations of what she proposes to put on there. and we'll show the area of the variance. And then I think that'll make a little bit more sense as to why, we'll just walk through why they added number 6, I think, and then what I heard and interpreted from the LPA, which I thought was actually some pretty, why they decided to eliminate conditions. Makes sense to me. But the pictures will help clarify that a little bit.
Going to reference something that we already have? Are you going to reference something that we already have in our
Yeah,
packet?
yeah, so
Well, why don't
I-
we just go ahead with that?
I don't know what page it is on your packet.
Yeah.
So it's probably the 5th, 6th slide that has an elevation from the side of the existing house and then the proposed pool and structure. There's 2 pages in a row that have images on it. Here we are. So it is slide 6.
Okay.
Didn't have that.
The last page.
Okay.
So what you see on your, on our right, which would be each side, is the existing house, and I think we have it marked on there, existing house. Everything from the roof of that existing house forward is what she is proposing to construct. So in the center is a pool, an elevated pool, and then beyond that would be a open air seating area with a tiki hut style roof. There isn't anything enclosed. It isn't going to be living space. It is going to have a restroom, but even that's going to be open air. I mean, not that you can see, but I mean, there's going to be coverings and stuff, but it's not going to be all concrete blocked in. So staff is proposing that everything front of the pool would be moved to the side. So it would be, honestly, at that point, it would be wider than the existing house or just about as wide. So our thought was one that putting it forward just makes a great flow. It balances it out. It has one of the conditions is that the tiki hut and that roof can't be any higher than the existing house. It produces a nice look and a nice balanced look to it. And so we have the height that she's taken care of. The property is a fairly deep property, so we were still able to not only go beyond the 25 feet, but clear up to 60 feet as far as the setback from Estero Boulevard. What I heard the LPA say, and what they started talking about this, was the point of trying to minimize the variance. Part of it was, a big piece was a visual impact. So that condition 6 was for the staff saying, let's make the visual impact as little as we can on Estero Boulevard. If we take off the tiki hut, move it to the side, instead of 60 foot of a setback, we'll have 75 or 80. So that's better, I guess. More is better. It's a minimizes the total variance space. The LPA in our discussion was, well, if you move it to the side and now you're producing greater kind of wall or area that is almost as wide as the existing house. So instead of having at you just instead of just looking at this piece straight on, you would actually be looking at something that would be kind of twice as wide, which we thought produced more of a wall and not as an attractive of an effect. So I guess there's 2 ways to minimize this. You want to minimize the distance between the house to the east and west, or do you want to minimize by 20 or 30 feet how close it is to Estero Boulevard and then width of the structure that you would see? If you move beside, the width is going to be more on Estero Boulevard. If you leave it the way it is, we'll be 60 feet back and have just a tiki look from the front is all you'd see from Estero Boulevard. Some pretty nice landscaping that they intend to keep on site. You guys, I've heard you all did a site visit, tons of vegetation on there. She plans to keep that. She loves the look. Heard Megan, the chair of the LPA, speak a little bit beforehand. This was the piece of property she was talking about that probably the big tall house is going to go up against, so she intends to keep vegetation as well as she can, so she produces her, kind of a little sanctuary effect there. And we just have the luxury of having enough of a space that we can have that 60-foot setback from Estero. The big red box there is a lot wider than we need for what we're proposing. So with the pool and the tiki hut in front of it, we only need less than half of that space left to right. I just showed the variance box that would go to the existing setback requirements and the 60 feet. That was just the proposed area, because we don't have a definitive site plan exactly where it's going to go, but it's going to be centered on the house, and we only need about half that distance. Move it to the side, then we'll need majority of that distance. To be fair, we would still have room for the setback on the sides, so we can still meet those requirements. We would just prefer that it's lined up and produces that balanced look and has less facade on Estero Boulevard.
Thank you. Any questions for the gentleman? No? Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Huh.
Bring it back to the council. Is there a motion to approve the variance, deny the variance, condition the variance?
One kind of comment. Now, there's talk about using a vegetative barrier to kind of minimize the effect from the visual effect from the street, but how does that go with the last council's wish to try to limit
Maintain the view corridor?
kind of hedge so you can have a safe egress and to the in and out of the property?
A question for us or for the
Well, the answer to your question, Counselor, is that if, typically what happens is the zoning gets approval and then we get building plans, and the plans are subject to the current set of codes. And then if they want a variance from that, they would have to come back in front of you again.
Okay. For a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions the variance that's been presented?
I'll make a motion to approve variance 202-00052 with the LPA recommended conditions.
Second that.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
like the previous one, when the applicant actually spoke, it's after you had opened the public hearing. Technically, we have to.
Opened it to the public, yeah. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this? Hearing none, we'll close that. Okay, there's a motion to approve the variance with the LPA recommendations. It's been seconded. Discussion. Objection? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck. Okay, we'll move on to the administrative agenda. First item is the sunset celebration for year 21, sunset celebration, special event permit and fees. Mr. Manager, you want to speak to this?
Yes, the folks in Times Square, the Informal Merchants Association, again, would like to start up the music, typically on Friday and Saturday nights. The issue really, if there is an issue in this item, is just purely their request for a rebate for the time spent under COVID or be credited against this year's vacation. The math, since the council has adjusted the amounts, is basically that, for all intents and purposes, that the credit will pay off permit fee for 21.
Is that your recommendation to,
Well, it's
Is it equitable?
It's the council's money for appropriation purposes. My feeling is that we in the interest of public safety took steps to protect the public's health, and that was important to us. And I don't think we can put a number on that. We shouldn't put a number on that.
May I? This isn't the only recurring event on the beach that got canceled. So if we do this for these guys, that means, in my opinion, everybody, the farmers markets, et cetera, everybody should get a credit. So something we have to consider. It's not just giving these guys a credit.
Well, again, we had some people who applied for permits and didn't carry out their activity, and some who did, who got to the point where they paid us. Question, my mindset is that if we want people's cooperation, when we have to take an extraordinary action in the interest of public safety, we should do what we can to minimize the financial impact to them of that decision.
I agree. And with that being said, I mean, if we don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months or whatever, it could revert back to bad again. We don't know that, but it could. We'd have to be willing and ready and able to pull the plug again. Though we don't want to do that, that's a possibility. Councilman?
What has changed in the fee schedule to make, because I was certainly struggling with the math here.
All right, so the old fee schedule for recurring events, I believe was a higher number, if I remember correctly, and that's why basically there is, as I understand the math, their permit fee for this year would basically be free if you approve this item presented.
I guess maybe my point was missed, that if we do it for these guys, I don't want it just to be a motion for them. I think it should be applied, that we make the motion so it applies to anyone in similar circumstances.
No, but part of the point though is that, okay, the fee schedule has changed. So they essentially bought something that was more expensive. Now they're using a credit to buying something when it's cheaper. So what do we credit? Do we credit them for the days, or do you credit them for the dollar spent? And if we do, like the Vice Mayor is suggesting, that we apply this to everybody who's had a recurring permit that has not been able to use it because of our action to try to curtail the virus, what's our exposure with that? How many type events are there that we're talking about, and what kind of costs we could potentially get?
So relative to our other activities, this is a very minor revenue to us. It's really, for the most part, cost recovery for all intents and purposes. So, I don't anticipate that we won't have a balanced budget if the council were to grant these. It's just really as I said earlier, if we're going to do things for safety, I think we need to stand behind that. And if, in the extent that other people are impacted, that's of course the council's call. I have no objection to that. And if you want to grant me the ability to handle those administratively, I'd be happy to take care of those.
There's two ways. One, we could fund the monies, or if people ask for it. And the other was we can just let them defer those permits to use when they can.
Yeah, it's cheaper for us to give them rather than refund. I would definitely recommend that we don't get into a refund issuance of funds, because that costs us more money to process items. It's easier to give them a credit against their next bill. Whenever they have their next event, council wants us to give them a credit, we'll give them a credit.
You're recommending by dollar, not by event.
Right. That's how this is done. Both events are calculated out, and we.
So if I could just add one thing, let's not let the sort of the public interest escape the discussion here, in the sense that approving the renovation of Times Square, including a public stage, is part of the public renovation of Times Square, which I think creates a quality of place for this island that it's difficult to calculate that value you're talking about economic development, quality of place is a premier piece of that economic development puzzle, and having a quality of place in Times Square, I think, enhances the whole community. These are folks who literally chip in to hire a band, and that this band eventually will play on this new stage that we're going to finance. But it seems like that's something we'd want to encourage as a community. And so I think this is a reasonable concession to make to folks that have been having a difficult time. And I'm not opposed, Councilor Hasafras, in terms of helping other folks who have been impacted adversely as well. I think that's a fair point.
How extensive do you think that list would be, Roger? I mean, I just don't want to have people crawling out of the woodwork here, like, not to pick on anybody, but say the Lions Club with the Shrimp Festival. Even though those permits would have had to have been pulled by conjunction with Lee County, could still seek relief from us for various fees and so forth.
Right, I know, I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we refund fees paid to third parties, whether they be governmental or private. I'm just talking about the fees that they would pay the town.
Yes. But you see where I'm getting with that, though, I mean.
I do. I'm still very comfortable that if that was council's policy, it wouldn't have an impact on our budget.
Right. Okay.
To the point that you're kind of also making, Mayor, does that give us some exposure? Are we accepting some liability for the losses for these events that is greater than our permit fees?
I don't believe we are, but maybe the attorney could answer that one.
That's a very short answer from an attorney.
I'm striving.
Outside of the fee issue, is there anything different in their permit for this season than there has been in the past? Are there any changes?
To my knowledge. Other than we're assuming they're going to go on a Friday, Saturday schedule as they have in the past. They may adjust that, but that's their decision based on external factors. They're basically reserving the room Fridays and Saturdays.
Prior motion?
I think it does, to include not only the Times Square merchants, but the other ones that we're talking about, if that's the council's wish.
I guess we need two. We need a motion to approve this permit, and then a separate motion to waive the fees for everyone who had recurring event permits. John's nodding at me.
I think in that second motion, Counselor, would you agree that it would be best to leave that up to the town manager on a case-by-case basis, give him that discretion? Or do you want to give everybody a blanket?
Well, the way I'm boxing it in is saying recurring events. There's a different permit for a recurring event than there is for just the Shrimp Festival, which isn't a recurring event. So it's a very limited number of people when I say recurring.
And then if you use the
I'd like it to apply to all of them.
if you use the term recurring, then would they have to then make application or ask for it?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we accept the Sunset Celebration Special Event Permit and Fees. Exactly how you want this motion, but
Approve?
that we approve it.
Second.
Yeah, fee and waiver process.
Well, I was going to make a second motion for the fees separate from approving their permit.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a second? There's a second? Okay. Any discussion, further discussion?
So this is just for approving the permit,
Permit.
nothing about the fee waiver or anything.
This is approving 11A presented.
Further discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, second one?
And I'll make a motion that the town, in the same manner as is set out in the request here, credit fees for any organization that had a prior recurring event and reapplies
The days missed, right?
the days missed.
And deal with the manager resolution of those. Second?
Second.
Move and second. Any further discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Okay. Next item is Resolution 20-49, which is the Mooring Field Strategic Plan. Roger?
Mr. Mayor, will you ask Chelsea to step in, please? Mr. Mayor, members of council, you heard from the chair of the Anchorage Advisory Committee this morning. He and our colleagues have worked very hard, along with staff and outside consultant, to develop this strategic plan, the future, guide the future operations of the mooring field, and subject to your review and approval on council.
Okay. That's,
I guess the thing I would add to this, having been present at the meeting, is there were a lot of questions about sending this on because a lot of the dates were inaccurate, but Chelsea has reassured us that a plan is a living thing and the dates can be changed. We're in essence approving the spirit of the plan, not necessarily concrete dates.
thank you for that clarification.
Sort of a procedural question, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
John, could you help us understand, if we approve the strategic plan, is that in essence all we're doing is approving a plan? In other words, how binding is that?
Like anything, it's subject to potential modification, but it certainly, the intent was described by the mayor or member of the Anchorage Advisory Committee, as well as the document itself. It's intended to be, using their words, roadmap, move forward with implementation of priorities that the Anchorage Advisory Committee has identified.
So if I have concerns, I love the mooring field mission to provide a safe and welcoming experience for mariners. It's very appropriate. The mooring field vision is to be the preferred mooring destination in Florida, in all of Florida. I'm not sure, and Kathy did a nice job of explaining what she meant, but I'm not sure vision matched vision, or I think what she said more matched the mission as opposed to this vision. And maybe we want to be the preferred mooring destination in all of Florida. I'm not sure that we do. If we do, that's a whole different sort of, maybe I'm getting bogged down here needlessly, but it just seems like okay, then I'll stop.
Yeah, Jim, I see it, the vision is aspirational.
I'm not even sure aspirationally that's what we want to do, but maybe it is, but I'll let it go. But because I appreciate all the good work
No,
they've done.
everybody
Yeah.
wants to be the best.
I don't mind being the best, but it's the preferred destination. In other words, if we have, beautiful, even more beautiful accommodations in a restaurant and 20 showers and gold-plated sinks, and then does that make us the preferred? I certainly want us to be a safe and welcoming experience, but I'm not sure if I want to be the preferred mooring location of all of Florida. And maybe we do, I don't know, but that one just gave me pause, that's all, I'll just say that.
We don't want Palm Beach to have anything over us, or Collier for that matter. Chelsea, do you want to add anything to this conversation?
Just want to thank the Anchorage Advisory Committee. They spent a lot of time, and like yourself, they very detailed with words and what adjectives they wanted to use. This is, the mooring field's been in place for over 10 years, and so it's nice to see this come to fruition and support in making this come true, so.
Thank you. Thanks for your work.
I just have a couple questions into the technology part, and maybe just too far down the line that there's a lot of things in here that are pretty lofty goals, like the dedicated Wi-Fi for the entire mooring field. That seems pretty expensive and pretty lofty. And some of these things look like they may or may not be able to be integrated into, if the council decides they want to move forward with purchasing those 2 units, like a kiosk and all this other things that are in here. Is there discussion to have that maybe all encompassed within the units that they're suggesting that we look into?
Well, I think clearly, this document is pointing to bigger and better things, and possibly more expensive things. I don't know that this voting for this item today obligates you to support those individual decisions that will come down the pike. So this is a picture in their minds of where they would like to go. All of those aspirations come with decisions on costs that this council has the right to review and approve. And you shouldn't feel that by voting yes for this, that obligates you automatically to approve for all of those things that you might see in the way of additional items coming down the road. That being said, be aware that that picture that I think they have in their minds, and I think some of you are developing in your minds, is something that they intend to work towards. And to the extent that might need some guardrails, then I would say that a joint meeting in the near future would be warranted.
You said the words I needed to hear.
I'll reiterate what I said earlier. I hope that somewhere along the line, some financials will be developed, some sort of budgeted, or putting some numbers together where, if we're going to make the commitment to spend taxpayer dollars on the improvements down there in the mooring field, what type of revenues can we expect to help offset the costs of the operation and so forth. I don't expect it to be to pay for itself completely, but much as we would for Bay Oaks or the Newton House or any other town-owned property, we'd like to at least have an idea of what we can expect to, what sort of revenue stream we're going to create here and offset the costs of running the operation. I'm sure that'll all come later. Okay, well, thank you very much. Yes?
I was just going to move to approve Resolution 20-49.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any objection? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Chelsea. Next item is Resolution 20-50, the SRF loan. This is the authorizing the town to finalize a loan agreement for the eligible stormwater portions of the North Estero Phase 2, Part 2, Tier 1 side streets and North Estero Phase 2, Part 1 projects, and have the town manager finalize the application to the State of Florida revolving fund loan. Are there any questions of the town manager before we get underway with this? If not, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Just a second there, Mayor. So in the conversation with Mr. Book, he mentioned some kind of grant opportunity for projects below 50K, particularly about infrastructure or transportation, and he mentioned things like stormwater. Is there an opportunity there to cleave off a portion of this and try to use that as a grant application?
Answer is yes. We've done, that's the one that he referenced was vetoed by the governor last year as part of his comprehensive veto package, I guess. But we would make the same attempt. I don't know at this point, from timing standpoint, whether that would be the Part 2, Phase 1, or a set of the side streets, but it would be something associated with this, yes.
Because I know that, you're going through the priorities and doing the ones that are most needed for this, and it seems like, maybe the one that's the most justifiable for a grant could be considered as something you can separate out to apply for.
Yeah, well, we'll clearly work with Mr. Buchan to seem to make the best case, but I think, what I've told the lead delegation is that the ratepayers in this town are spending $60 million of their money to improve the infrastructure, which improves the economic conditions here in town and opportunity for economic growth, and among other things. And on a percentage basis, what we're asking them to participate in our project is relatively small, and I think that hopefully they recognize rewarding good behavior in the town taking on projects of this magnitude for these very necessary purposes.
I see you standing up there. Do you have something to add to this conversation?
Christy Corey for the record. I just wanted to let you know also, before utilities took over stormwater, Chelsea with Public Works had started with the hazard mitigation grant program, and she had put quite a bit of effort into that. So that came into the utilities when stormwater came in, and we are currently working on, with the state, with the hazard mitigation program. So we're looking currently at about $4 million on the Tier 1 side streets. So we're hoping to get quite a few grants from that program alone for the stormwater.
Would be great.
We're working on it.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you, Christie. Okay, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Move to approve Resolution 20-50.
Moved, is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any objection to the motion? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item, D, has been scratched until the 16th. In its place, we're going to inject the agreement on the TDC projects to request for grant cycle for 2021, 2022. This was going to be discussed at our M&P on Thursday. It was the only item, so we chose to discuss it today instead of dedicating a whole meeting just to this one item. Here we are. Who wants to lead off this conversation here? Roger?
Well, I will, from the standpoint of, on the behind the blue sheet, the first 2 pages summarize the projects that we would like to submit on. Your approval today, the staff formalize the applications would come back to you at a later date for approval, but this is your opportunity to look these over, give the staff any input on the list of projects here and the amounts, and/or any other project you would like us to try to pursue.
Vice Mayor, what do you have to add to this? This is your wheelhouse here with the TDC.
I guess my first question is, we're putting back in the option that was denied due to lack of funding. Did the cost for that go up any? I don't remember what we asked. It did go up? Chelsea's nodding yes.
I believe it did, just to inflationary factors per se.
It's unfortunate.
This was the renourishment.
No, the restrooms at Palm Avenue were axed. We asked for the same last year, and basically the TDC axed every capital project from every community that requested.
It seems like most of these are like ongoing maintenance projects, line maintenance, Mount House, Newton Park.
Yes, the sort of the new projects would be the restroom and the beach nourishment.
One thing that was put in partially back in, it's one of your examples here in 2017, 2018, was that we put up 6 interpretive signs at beach accesses. We've got the designs for 6 different signs. It seems like it would be maybe I'd like to see us put an application for 6 more signs. 6 locations at what we've already designed, put at other beach accesses.
Sounds good to me. It's de minimis in the amount of money that they about.
Sir.
Procedural question, maybe. Chelsea, are you the beach renourishment expert for the island?
That is.
Is Chad here?
We'll find out.
We're waiting on Chad, if I can jump in and ask a question. Looking at these from the past, it seems like it's the same thing or close to the same thing over and over that we're asking for. Is there any reason why, based on how I read it, couldn't ask for assistance with the Times Square project or Bay Oaks?
Well, the county takes extremely conservative read of the laws that govern the use of TD funding. That being said, we can make an application and see what happens. would say this, that probably Bay Oaks will probably be possible. I don't know if the vice mayor has an opinion about that. And I would say that for whatever reason, unbeknownst to me, they have taken past position that Times Square is different from their beach access, even though we consider it access to their beach access, but try.
It's actually something that I was going to advocate for this year, but considering the deep decline in TDC inflow, it didn't seem like the good time to go in and be asking for more. Timing-wise, I just, when you go in and ask for something where you're trying to expand the rules a little bit or change a few people's minds, you need to do it when there's maybe some money there. I anticipate that we might not even get what we're asking for.
And I guess my question wasn't necessarily about asking for more, but in place of. It seems like, nothing against Newton Park or the Mound House, but it seems like we get a lot more of the attention when it comes to TDC funding than perhaps Times Square or Bay Oaks get. And the town and the community are spending a lot of money or potentially to upgrade these.
And you probably want to talk to your county commissioners, because they have set up a set of rules for RTDC, which is far more constrained than other counties. Other counties spend money on art festivals and all kinds of wonderful things. Our commissioners have chosen to really clamp down on what they will spend our TDC funds on. A huge percentage is allocated for advertising. Another huge percentage is allocated for sports venues. And actually, the money that we get is a small percentage of that, and they very much constrain what we're allowed to spend it on.
And just to add to the vice mayor's comments, and the amount we contribute is disproportionate to the amount we receive.
Which I'm not arguing that point. My point is, based on the description that's listed here, I could argue that Bay Oaks is just as much of a park as Newton Park.
Not park so much as access to water is an important, if it's on the beach, if it has access to the bay, but Bay Oaks doesn't have access to the bay.
But it will.
I was told that that was taken out of the plans.
Not in the phase one. Right?
No.
What, putting like a kayak launch? We're talking about?
But just be clear, just the answer was just having access to the bay, then you would make the argument that Bayside Park has access to the bay. But their viewpoint is, belief, and Vice Mayor, you've sat in many of these meetings and you heard the county attorney, assistant county attorney's interpretations. They don't view a park as an attraction, even though a park in my mind can be an attraction.
Well, clearly, Lynn Hall Park is an attraction. There's no doubt in my mind.
That's funded though through Lee County asks.
Yeah,
But,
I get that.
If you're saying that I need to lobby my commissioners, then that's what I'll do. But me, I don't understand how Mound House is any more or less of an attraction than Times Square.
Well, Mound House is a cultural destination, as is Newton Park. Both of them are. Bay Oaks is not, and Times Square is not. I mean, that's me interpreting their interpretation.
Commissioners assign an attorney to represent the TDC. It's been the same person for years, and she has a very strict interpretation, and the board follows her interpretation. And I have subtly mentioned at various times different aspects. I get little support from anyone.
I'm just trying to think a little bit outside the box as to, with the redevelopment of Times Square, there is or isn't going to be bathrooms added there, whether they're on Palm Avenue or they're paying for them there. Kind of a wash.
And I agree with you. This year, I had trained to get into this spot when Anita was leaving, and I was hoping that when I was serving this year, that I was going to try to push the envelope a little bit, and in addition to all these requests, ask for some money for Times Square. I just don't think the timing's right for it, considering the steep decline in income that they've had. That getting them to enlarge their look at things this year, I see as less likely than maybe in the future.
Yeah, just to follow on the Vice Mayor's comment, typically what happens is, first they fund the advertising, then they fund their sort of recurring maintenance projects, and they fund whatever they have left in the way of capital projects. Those are sort of the new one-off types of things. So what they did this year was they funded 0 new capital projects. Only funded advertising and maintenance. So to the Vice Mayor's point, a new project is always going to have more headwinds than an old new project.
Yeah, and one thing I have to kind of maybe agree with Councilman Allers is, the other thing about the timing is that right now we're doing these projects. So if we wait too long to ask and we're done, then we really don't have a lot of traction to.
They had a $15 million shortfall last year.
I want to be clear, I have no problem asking, but I think what the Vice Mayor is subtly trying to caution you is that you don't want to create a negative perception that the town is being greedy in these difficult times and whatever, because then you start getting headwinds against projects that are funded, or typically are funded, or they start getting haircuts. So
Although,
it's a political game, and frankly, the rules are somewhat stacked against the town.
One point I want to make to this too is that the fact that we are putting our money where our mouth is. So we are engaging in these very expensive projects. And it seems like maybe one strategic way to try to do this is, let's say we ask for funding for a dinghy dock, or not a dinghy dock, a kayak launch that would be at Bay Oaks. Now that is on that project itself is related to the water, and it is something that, we probably maybe wouldn't do without that TDC grant. Maybe ask for money for like the stage or some other portion of the project, and just ask and see what happens. Because these are projects that we're doing of a 95% match.
Councilor Veach, I agree with you, but here's my point of disagreement. My point of agreement with you is that we should be asking the county for financial assistance on some of these things that we're doing. Whether they decide to use TDC funding, general revenues, impact fees, or some other funds that they have, really isn't the concern of ours. Our concern is that we are building amenities here that not only service our residents, but service people from Lee County, other 66 counties, and other countries, other states and other countries.
They're spending the advertising to bring here.
And in recognition of that, and having a place for the people to come, as the mayor's alluding to, and the fact that all this money comes back to them to support tourism and other activities, they should be helping us. And we shouldn't get caught up in which one of their pockets it comes out of. I don't know that we really care. What we do care about is that whether they recognize Bay Oaks as a regional park, they recognize Times Square as a destination, and the other projects that we're doing here is really where we need to maybe adjust their field of vision.
Yes, if I can reiterate, I agree with you both. This isn't the year to do it.
I understand that. My point is, the only way to be assured to not get any of the funding is to not ask.
When is there ever a good time to ask someone for money?
When there's money to be had.
Well, my point is,
like Roger said, we would be looking like we're greedy to be coming in and asking for an area where we're trying to bend the rules and expand the rules at a time when they're cutting capital projects that they have funded in the past. It's timing and its appearances. Believe me, my goal when I asked to be appointed to the TDC was to go in and convince you all that we needed to ask for money for Times Square. And I was going to go in and fight the fight. It's not the time to do it. We not only, I would almost guarantee you we would get a no, but not only would we get a no, we would get a bad reputation in the future. They remember that and would hold it against us.
You know, and if we were going and saying, you know, that we want them to fund Bayside Park or Times Square entirely, I would agree, but we're still putting in the majority of the money for this. So we're not, you know, we're asking for a little help for a big project.
But you're asking to bend the rules to do it. And the rules as they have them set forth right now. And the time to advocate for change is not when you're also fighting an uphill battle to get the dollars.
Do you think that, like asking for a kayak launch at Bay Oaks would be not within the criteria?
Definitely not.
It's on the water for tourists.
They have lots of strange rules. One of them, I don't know, Kelsey's or Allison's in here. She gave me a handout once where they won't buy picnic tables, right? Even for the Mound House, which they approve other things for. Me, a picnic table makes ultimate sense. You want people to be able to sit down, enjoy a drink, et cetera, et cetera.
I guess my whole point, to circle back around, was it just appears to me that we're always using the TDC funding for the same two projects. And that's just an appearance to me.
Again, I agree with you. This isn't the year to break out.
Well, maybe it's not, but maybe it's time to just start putting the bug in the ear or something. That's all I'm trying to get at. I'm not saying that we need to go ask them for money to pay for this or pay for that. My whole point is it doesn't hurt to ask for money for different things now and again.
Well, that's why we're here today, to have this discussion. But one of the things we do is that something that has been vetted and funded in the past clearly has less headwinds than something that would require a very favorable interpretation of the rules based upon how we've seen them interpret the rules in the past. So, believe me, it's not a matter of, trying to avoid the staff work. I'm concerned with some of the things that the vice mayor is saying. And frankly, as I was saying earlier, I'm concerned about the perception of the fact that that we have to find sort of the perfect hole to fit our project in versus having the county just say that, hey, this is a good project for the community and we want to find a way to help you out. And I wish they would take more of that type of attitude.
I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I got today from Ronnie Book, our lobbyist, was that even though the money is tightened up, and in his case, he says it hasn't, there's lots of money, but he said even though it has appearances of tightening up, you have to be in line and ready to get it once they pull the trigger. And I think that we should be the same way with the county, not just with the TDC, but in all regards with Lee County. So, yes, sir.
They were kind enough to grab
Chad
Chad.
is here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your question about the
Chad,
beach
I don't know if
renourishment.
I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know if you have this in front of you or this beach nourishment issue. I don't know if you noticed, I'm sure Roger's talked to you, but at the last meeting I talked about the south end of the island having some challenges, probably 3.5 or 3/4 of a mile south of the Wyndham, demonstrable erosion. I think it's really residual as a result of some of the hurricanes that didn't hit us. We still had a lot of activity as a result of those hurricanes that I think created some additional erosion issues. I love what we're doing for the north end and the central part of the island. I'm just trying to understand better how this works. It looks as if this is a long-term plan to address the issues on the northern and the southern end. And I don't know if you're the person that puts this together or if that's the vice mayor or Roger in terms of the ask. In other words, if we had needs down the road, which I believe we do on the south end, how does that process germinate, and how do we get into that queue, if you will? And also, the piece for the north end of the island, is this the first bite of the apple? Is this the first formal approval, or was there a stage approved? It seemed like we were talking a little bit about that last year. Or is this the first formal approval of the north end piece? Because it seems like they're already doing some work down there. Help me just understand the big picture and how this all works.
So let me begin by saying, so you sort of have the quantitative analysis aspect, prove that it's needed. It's sort of the year one project. The year two project is that if the quantitative analysis shows that there's a need for nourishment, then you begin to approach the TDC to actually fund that renourishment. Then depending upon the amount, it may be a multi-year project or one-year project, depending on the size and scale of the project. So they're very, what they look at is, did you spend the money you got last year? That they're very concerned about that. So we always try to size the bites within what our spending capacity is, as well as recognizing that you have sort of this analysis concept stage, and then you get to the actual, let's fund the renourishment, and then if it's a big area, it's maybe funded over multiple years. But while we're working on segment A, we immediately are always looking at where is segment B and where is segment C and where is segment D, with the idea of perpetuating a total north to south beachfront in perpetuity so that people could always walk the length of the beach. And it's a beautiful beach, and it's attractive to folks who not only live here, but come here.
Roger, is that you, or is that Chad? Is that an engineer who works for the TDC? Is it the county?
It's a consultant who does that analysis for us.
For the town?
Yeah, we hire a consultant who does that analysis, and they put their sort of sign and seal on that, because clearly, from the county's perspective, if we did it for ourselves, we would always need it. The answer to the check would always be yes. So by having a third party analysis, hopefully it says they look at it independently, they put their sign and seal on it, that it's needed.
Is that, Chad, are you the one that has conversations? Have you noticed, first of all, the erosion that I'm talking about? And second of all, do you have a conversation with this consultant that the town has, or how does it all work from a practical standpoint?
He's our town project manager, and he works with the consultant, and then when we get to construction stage, he would work with the contractor.
Have you noticed what I was referring
You've been
to?
out to the south end, you want to talk about that?
Yes, sir. So it is designated as critically eroded by FDEP, and it does look like it's significant erosion.
Heard as to why that is, just out of curiosity from the experts?
If you look at the shape of the beach, you can see that that's just a head point, and it's been designated as critically eroded in the past, so it's not necessarily.
These things will be sort of naturally fall into the queue as we go down the road here. This firm will provide the analysis, that analysis that will then be forwarded to the TDC at the appropriate time. It all happens, or do we have to make it happen, or does it happen sort of naturally, or what's the?
Well, it happens by virtue of you approving our project list and us submitting it to the TDC. We bring to you the projects that we think are queued up and ready to go. For opportunity, obviously, to add or subtract from that list. But in terms of our intention, we're aware of that problem. It's on our radar. As soon as we get this north end moving, that will be our next effort.
Very good. All right. Thank you. That's very helpful.
By the time all that happens, Jim, Mother Nature will have filled the hole in all by herself.
And that may be true.
Let's hope.
Okay.
And they're not hesitant to give you money for sand.
That's the big
I
one.
remember you telling me that, yeah.
That's the big one.
So if you want to put that sand and make concrete, then
Okay. Have we hammered this one around enough? You don't need any action on this, Roger, do you?
No, sir, just that we will be bringing back the formal application for your approval at a subsequent meeting.
Okay, thank you.
and I think if we really come up with any kind of consensus, if we want to try to add any capital projects, whether we think that's, because there's some disagreement between council members about recommendation of adding some of these capital projects.
Maybe we could reschedule this for an M&P, and we can kick it around again. at another meeting that has a little bit more of an agenda on it. One.
Well, clearly, I don't know that if there's any further input.
Suggest some more
If they have
items.
any further input, the next meeting in November, would it be okay?
Morning, Allison Geeson. So the reason this was on the M&P for November, because for you all to be able to vote for the first meeting in December, because there's only one meeting in December, it would have been that it wouldn't have been able to make the agenda because they're so close together. So that's why we wanted you to be able to vet it at the November M&P, so then staff could have time to get the projects together and submit finalization, because the application does open in early January. So we want to make sure that we can do that. I think we could.
We can get these done, and then if there's something
Yes.
added on by the council November 17th, we'll get it in.
Want to,
16th, whatever that date is.
if we.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
One idea, and I'm going to circle back to this, is the idea of a kayak launch, because it's something that's on the water, which I know is one of the criteria, and it's a small item for a bigger project. It may be a way to open the door. I also, like, again, those interpretive signs you put up, I see those get a lot of people reading them. And I know it's a minor item to put in. And just little projects that we can maybe, it's not a big ask, but enough to maybe get our foot in the door for some of those.
A comment on the kayak launch. Do you mind if I do that? The kayak launch, I've been on TDC now for 6 years as liaison for the town of Fort Myers Beach. And that did come up. I did contact Andrea, who is the attorney, and that was something that past directors, because I was working with the TDC to see if and that was not something that was found in the legislative findings for Bay Oaks. Matanzas Pass Preserve just now has their kayak launch completed, which is extremely close to where the Bay Oaks would be. And it was found that legislative findings that it would not be funded. And it was already very vetted out for that. So I'm just letting you know, because Bay Oaks is not considered a destination or cultural destination as attraction as town manager and the vice mayor stated. So they are very particular about the ask, and we do want to continue to have a wonderful reputation.
And if we're going to go in and try to expand, I think we need to attack it from the Times Square perspective, because I think that's where we have our best chance of success, is convincing them that that is a beach access area. We don't want to go in and fight for an area where we're going to lose. We need to pick the one that's the best, it's closest to their standards. And if we can open up their definition of beach access to include Times Square, then forever after that, we'll be able to ask for things for Times Square. We'll have a precedent set for that area where we would be spending money. So,
Restrooms.
yes. So I think we need to be very careful about which one we pick, when we ask, and what we ask for.
Now, to allow that, what if we were to ask for something that would tie, specifically tie Times Square to being near the beach, like a foot wash or something like that, really is the proximity to the beach is why you would have it.
Well, I think they turned down a foot wash because there are foot washes available in Lynn Hall Park right next to the beach here. So that's
At a different beach access.
well, then you're going to get the whole NIMBY thing from people who don't want to have us improving our beach accesses that are next to residences.
We're talking about the beach. They were talking about trying to use Times Square and to help try to make that look more like a beach access, both by its utilization and of something we would put in, like the foot washes.
Foot washes, in my opinion, foot wash is not the way to go to crack this open.
Just kind of brainstorming here.
I understand.
Okay.
So let me just say one last thing. Notwithstanding Councilor Veach's point about the interpretive signs, we can put in additional interpretive signs, about $1,000 a piece. So that's not, if that's something you'd like us to pursue, that's something we can pursue.
don't know that we really need to go to TDC for that.
So, Vice Mayor Hasselfrest, so if you could pick one thing out of either existing in the current Times Square plans or is not, that would help try to tie in Times Square to being a beach asset, some physical funded element, what would you do?
I would not take anything up this year. This is not the year to take it. You will get a no, and you will damage yourself. Asks. I can't tell you how convinced of this I am.
Okay. All right. We'll move on. Next item is public comment. Anybody wish to speak before the council? Public comment? Hearing none, we'll go to town manager's items.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, we had someone speak at the first public comment, and I just wanted to partially address their comments. The way the code is currently written with regard to the beach vendor ordinance, it sets a hard deadline. And I think you all know, we on staff take words of the council, this council and other council's ordinance as written. We don't take liberties with them without your permission. As such, a hard deadline passed. And therefore, the only place that individual can get relief is from you all. We don't have a position on whether you should or shouldn't give them relief. They explain to you the circumstances. You determine whether it's appropriate to give the individual the relief. I want to just be clear. We don't dilly-dally with your ordinances. If it says something's a deadline, it's a deadline.
Isn't there a precedent that we had someone placed on our agenda with a similar circumstance like a year ago?
We've had cases where people have appealed staff denials. I think that's what you're referring to, and council has.
It was specifically a beach vendor who missed the deadline, as I remember last year. But it was specifically placed on as an agenda.
I think it was a street performer, if my memory serves me correctly, but the concept's the same.
I think what the manager is asking is if there's any consensus here amongst the council to give this gentleman any relief.
Maybe I wasn't artful. I said we actually put it on the agenda and noticed it.
You were
So-
artful. I knew exactly what you said.
But I didn't get an answer to my question. Do we need to put it on the agenda rather than consider it today? John?
I would, as much as the manager indicated, staff tries to implement the regulations that you've adopted or prior councils have adopted, and the regulations specifically say that in order for this type of issue to be before you, the particular individual has to submit an application. It needs to be prepared and placed on a future agenda for you all to then consider. There is an associated fee. Individual can, at that time, when it comes before you, potentially ask for you all to waive that. But there is a process, and my suggestion is that it be followed, that we direct the individual to follow that process because that's what the code says.
We did make the last year the person go through that process.
How does the rest of the council feel about that? Any opinions? My only concern here is that how long has the applicant or the vendor been down already?
Well, the
beginning of the month.
New permit for the year went into effect basically for October 1st. However, I don't know the date that he resolved his dispute with the upland property. I don't know if he resolved that on October 1st or October 2nd or yesterday. But the point is that we'll process it and get it on the agenda as soon as we have it.
Just a procedural question, Mr. Mayor. So what you're saying, John or Roger, is that you could reach out to this, the applicant, explain to him the procedure, and if he responds accordingly, we could potentially hear it on the 16th at our next council meeting if he responds in a timely way?
I don't see any reason why not.
Right. Anything else, Mr. Manager?
That's it for me today.
Attorney?
Just to reiterate some recent emails that I forwarded to each of you regarding the Jameson matter, that we did prevail on motions for summary judgment. We'll be meeting this afternoon with our outside counsel to discuss next steps in that case. The property owner has indicated to us through outside counsel his willingness to potentially settle the dispute. What that might be, that's the purpose of the conversation this afternoon, and we certainly will keep each and every one of you informed of that, and if necessary or appropriate, we'll schedule an executive session to get direction from the council in that regard. And then we have a similar call today with outside counsel with regard to the Beach Dune walkover Bert Harris claim. We still have a month and a half before our response is due under the statute. And again, we'll keep you all appraised of how that process is going, and we'll be setting up meetings with you all individually to brief you on that before that response is formally sent out on behalf of the town.
Each member will be, you'll take each member individually? Is that what you
Yes,
said?
because we can't, as you all recall, we can't have a Bert Harris executive session because the Bert Harris claim isn't in litigation as of yet.
Okay.
Now, the lobbyist was talking about sovereign immunity. And how does sovereign immunity and Bert Harris claims interact, if at all?
There's been case law saying that because the legislature created the Bert Harris Act as a separate cause of action, there's litigation as to whether or not it's subject to sovereign immunity, and the courts have said no.
What is covered by sovereign immunity?
Generally tort claims, trip and falls, accidents, those types of things.
Police departments, which
Police
we don't
department,
have.
wrongful death, wrongful arrest, whole category of claims we don't have to deal with because we don't have either our own police department or our own fire department. So for the most part, very general statement, here in the town is trips and falls and accidents.
Real quick, John, is that document you sent us on the Jameson case, is that confidential or is that a public document?
No, that's a public document. That's a court document.
Okay, thank you.
My comments are attorney-client privilege.
Okay.
The actual court order is a public document.
Thank you.
When did that document go out? I don't see it on my,
2 weeks ago?
About week before last, if I'll resend it.
yeah, please do.
Mr. Murphy.
I don't think I got it. Okay.
Question for John. I earlier brought up without any resolution whether when the LPA takes out a condition, whether it should be removed from the resolution that's presented to us. Is there any legal issue to that? Or is that just something that is our preference to express to Roger?
Your preference expressed to us, but I'm getting the general sense, well, maybe not, to include it, and you all always can take it out, as you did today. If it had been in there, in the resolution today, based upon your vote, we would have taken it out, because the vote on that particular item was approval with the LPA recommendation, which was to remove.
I was just asking whether it was a legal thing that we needed to work. Okay, thank you.
Nothing further.
Okay. Council members' items. Councilman Veach.
The only thing I think of is at one of our last meetings, Mayor, you opened the conversation on whether we should be considering to enforce mask mandate that we have on the island.
Yes.
That's probably a conversation worth having. I know that in the past, the town manager has expressed a reluctance to expose his employees to risk by trying to enforce this.
Mr. Town Manager, you want to answer that?
Statement.
Still feel that way?
Let's just remember that our staff are not prepared or trained to deal with confrontations with people. Trained to educate and walk away. And this has proven to be a very highly emotional issue. It's, telling someone to put on a mask for the 5 minutes that we're there and they leave and they take it off, I don't know if we're really accomplishing anything. Again, we work for the council, so if the council wants us to start doing that, we will do it.
I don't know if that's the way to do it or not. I mean, if there's a complaint coming, which there have been some complaints from some residents, that a certain establishment or establishments or whatever are not following the ordinance. I mean, you don't have to go down there and get in a confrontation with them. All they got to do is go down there and look in the window and see if.
Let me be clear, I'm talking about individuals. I wasn't talking about establishments.
You're talking about, Councilman?
Well, I mean, really specific, probably more specifically establishments. I think that's also because the establishments are more under the jurisdiction of the town as far as what we can do. Trying to issue a fine on somebody who's here for a weekend.
Right. What I thought you were talking about, establishments.
Just to be clear about that, now that we're talking about establishments, I have an understanding. I went to CVS and I went to Publix Sunday. Wearing a mask, but both cases, despite announcements to please wear a mask, despite signs to on the door to wear a mask, there were customers who did not wear a mask. And so I appreciate the fact that it won't be us having a direct confrontation with the customer, but would be the store having a direct confrontation with the customer. Now, there may be cases in some businesses where the employees are not wearing masks, and clearly that's something we might want to deal with. It's a different scenario. But if it's the individual customer who walks in and if we happen to observe it or we get a call to go there, are they still there or not? Address that or not address that as the council wishes. Whether the employees in the store are setting the example, in compliance with the council's code, it's something else we can take on. That'd be the easier of the three.
It's been my experience in speaking with people, business owners, store, shop owners, restaurants, whatever. If someone comes in and they're not wearing a mask and they require a mask to enter, which they all should, and it's ordinance, they can refuse to serve them. They can refuse to serve them. And frankly, to ask them to leave. They're well within their rights to do that. That's where the confrontations start. But usually after a few words thrown at each other back and forth, the person typically leaves. That's what I'm hearing, But, I was more concerned with the establishments themselves that are choose to ignore the ordinance completely. I mean, just hell with your ordinance. That's what I was mostly concerned with. Now, whether that's happening or not anymore, I don't know. But I had heard of that happening several weeks ago. So I'm not, follow up on yours, Councilman, that I'm not after going after every individual that walks into a place and having the mask patrol grab them and throw them down on the sidewalk and slap the cuffs on them. I don't want to do anything like that. I mean, our whole goal here has been education. You know, we've been trying to educate people all along, and that should still be the goal. And maybe that's part of our problem. Maybe we're not getting the word out enough that Fort Myers Beach has a mask ordinance in effect. Same that Collier County does. Same that several other municipalities around the state of Florida have. And we expect for our safety and for your safety for it to be followed. And
Well, Mr. Mayor, you know, I think it's something, it's appropriate discussion for the council, and I can tell you that there are people such as myself that if I don't see 99% mask compliance in a particular business, I don't walk into it. Just walk in and walk out. Others may not care, but if your desire is for us to make sure at least the employees of the business are following your code and to issue citations if they're not, it's your opportunity to tell us to do it, and we'll be happy to follow your direction.
you know, we're trying to do our part to stop the spread. That's our goal, I think.
And, you know, I think that, and, you know, I was recently reading a study out of Vanderbilt about Tennessee where there's a pretty strong correlation between mask ordinance, counties that have mask ordinances and the rising cases recently, with the higher compliance being lower increases in infections. So mask mandates are effective, and studies have been showing that. I think that maybe a course that I would suggest we consider is that on the complaint-driven basis that we do a lot of things in the town, that if someone complains that they go into a business and that employees aren't wearing masks and most of the customers aren't, that they can complain to town, but then if the town goes and investigates, they will fine the organization.
How else do you get compliance? How else do you get compliance?
I think that if you're really worried about the staffs, although there may not be a confrontation person, I can bet if you start finding some businesses for not wearing masks or whatever that people want to fine them for, you're going to have some confrontations. It may be at the front desk, it may be in council chambers, but you're going to get confrontations.
Well, you know what? Magistrate's hearing is filled with confrontation. The attorney will tell you that. That's one whole day of confrontation. So that's just life in the big city. That's the way that works. And, not to belittle your point, Councilman, but and as far as exposing the town staff and everything, there doesn't have to be any exposure at all, as far as I'm concerned. They look in the front door and see if it's complaint driven, like you say, and it's followed up on, and they witness it, then there's an infraction of the ordinance. It's just like any other code violation that we would have that, as you say, that we follow up on. So, anyhow.
I just think that the town manager has told us several times, doesn't feel that we have the resources to enforce it. For his words.
I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle, and that is I don't want to be micromanaging our manager. It's his job to decide how to use his staff, and if an egregious situation arises which he becomes aware of and he decides enforcement is appropriate, he'll do it. I'm not going to micromanage our manager.
We have given him direction in the past to not.
I don't remember that we gave him direction, but
I missed that too. Did we give the?
I don't
remember ever saying don't enforce it.
Well, not to put his employees at risk.
So I guess I'm getting a bit confused. John, are you having any heartburn, this colloquy here with respect to selective enforcement?
No, I think that the managers has made it very clear that the system that we're talking about is complaint driven, and if complaint is received, then staff will follow up.
But
whether it's one complaint or if it's 100.
I'm not sure, does that include if someone complains about an individual? Our ordinance includes individuals. If someone complains about an individual, we're told that we can't enforce it or won't enforce it, which I'm not disagreeing with, by the way. It just seems.
That we're picking out on the businesses. That's a
It
stretch.
seems very selective in terms of how we're going to enforce this thing. And I think we did well, even though I didn't support it, passing this, and just sort of leaving it somewhat vague and using it as an educational opportunity. But now if we're going to literally discuss how we're going to selectively enforce and who we're not going to enforce it on, who we are, we probably ought to rewrite the ordinance and direct it towards where we intend it, because selective enforcement concept is a slippery slope. I just urge caution.
I would disagree maybe with the choice of selective, because I think if we're saying it's complaint driven, like a lot of other things in our town are, then we're not selecting who to enforce it with. It's based on the complaint. If a complaint comes in against an individual and that can be verified, then I'd follow the same course.
That's a fair point, but I think, remember the colloquy we had with our town manager when this was first discussed, is that he said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Roger, that if code enforcement confronts an individual and asks them for their ID, they don't have to give it to them. Therefore, it makes enforcement extremely difficult, if not impossible. We passed the ordinance to include those folks anyways. I'm just trying to. We were doing really well until this colloquy occurred, and we're getting into nice. Respectfully.
Well, I disagree, obviously, and I also disagree that we're not micromanaging the manager. We passed an ordinance that you voted for, Vice Mayor, and so did you, Councilman, and so did I, that has provisions in it, and has fines, and it goes right about how to enforce it. And that's up to the town manager to enforce. I mean, I don't think that's micromanaging. I think that's asking him to do his job. So, anyhow, with that being said, if there's nothing else, anything else to that?
That's enough for me, I think.
Okay. All right, well, we got our dose of mask steam off today. Councilman Adderholt.
Nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
We have a hazardous waste collection coming up. I believe it's this Friday, 8 to 12. Chelsea, come in and correct me if I say anything wrong. It's at Bay Oaks. My understanding is that we are now going to be doing this quarterly, so I want to plant that in everybody's mind that if you miss this one, keep a box somewhere in your garage or back porch or whatever where you put this stuff. This is a water quality issue. All the stuff that you have, dangerous chemicals and all that crap, if you put it in your trash, it eventually ends up in the water. So we want to make sure it gets to the right facility where it's taken care of properly. The staff has gone to the trouble of setting this up on a quarterly basis so that you don't have to drive all the way into Fort Myers. Some distance, I think it's Ortiz, isn't it?
Yes.
That you have to drive to, so you won't have to drive there. 4 times a year, you'll be able to come to Bay Oaks and drop it off. I'm asking that you please, please do that. It's so important to our water quality and our environment in general.
Madam Mayor, if I may ask you, if someone in their garage has a bunch of old paint cans, solvents,
yes,
pesticides, they can literally drive and drop it off at no cost.
Right.
And know that it'll be properly disposed of. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And if there's other things besides that, are on the list, Chelsea wants to come out and add to it. I believe it's mostly liquids. The paint is often dried up.
Oh, actually, we encourage them to take the lids off and let it dry up. And
But I don't know, are we collecting like batteries and that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah.
You shouldn't be putting those in the trash. Certain kinds of light bulbs, hazardous materials in them. So Yes, if you have a question, please call Town Hall and ask what you can bring.
We can give you guidance if you have any questions as to what to bring or not. Put out some information about.
That's my speech.
I just wanted to follow up with Roger real quick about something Mr. Brook was talking about when he was talking about having something in his back pocket and 500,000 and be under that and the road projects. Other than Estero, do we have anything that would fit in that criteria that he was talking about that we could give him, have in his back pocket to use should the road Estero Boulevard not?
Yeah, let me just kind of tell you how that process works. So, right after we get our TDC application in, next thing we do is all the directors put together a list of potential projects. We give that list and maybe a 4 or 5 sentence summary to Mr. Book and Rhonda Brown look at. They then evaluate those and they say, we think these are the best options. We develop those options. That's the strategy that we typically use. We have projects such as the side streets and the R2 Phase 1 that I think will be projects that will meet their criteria and be a project that they could advocate for.
Mayor, I'm sorry, just a quick one.
Oh, redos, I'm sorry.
Somebody just texted me, they just said, is there a fireworks update? I'm guessing we weren't able to get it within the budget guidelines. So we weren't able to achieve it within the budget guidelines that you were given?
Correct.
Thank you, that just somebody had asked that.
What about how long do we get to store them for the
I believe
$1,000?
I believe the amount we paid, which was just somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000, gets us through July 4th of next year.
I'll throw a match on if we don't get it before that. All right. I just have one item, council members. I'm going to be out of town on the 16th, next meeting. So I will not be here unless something else comes up in the meantime that negates that. But, I will not be there, and I ask for your permission for an excused absence, that you understand that.
I'm in favor of granting the mayor an excused absence.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, we'll adjourn at 12:12. Clock is right. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.